Before we come to the before we come to the urgent cost on motorists, the urgent question, I'm going to repeat what I've said to the House at the start of the parliamentary session. The government's own ministerial code makes it clear that important policy announcements should be made in the first instance to this House when it's sitting. Some people seem to have very short memories. We've had the last 3 days of this announcement being drip-fed to the media. This is not in line with the government's own rules, and it is unacceptable. These backbenchers of either side are elected to this House to hear it first, not to be outside a Morrison's petrol station, not to be on a bus, not doing it to TikTok. These members should be respected. I uphold this House and I respect the members if the government doesn't. The government's got to get its act together and recognise the value of its own backbenchers. Right, we now come to the urgent question. Chancellor.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. To ask the Chancellor of the Exchequer if she will make a statement on the government's plan for the costs to motorists.
Lucy Rigby.
Mr. Speaker, just to note that your comments just then are fully noted, and I'll ensure that they're fed back to the entirety of the ministerial team. Mr. Speaker, the government is taking steps to support households and businesses with their fuel costs in response to the conflict in the Middle East. Rapid de-escalation in the Middle East remains the best way to bring down fuel prices, where the most impactful step is, of course, to reopen the Straits of Hormuz. That's exactly why the UK government is playing a leading role in the international effort to get shipping flowing freely. And indeed, I contrast that with the position of the Leader of the Opposition, who would have rushed us to war. So alongside this key step, Mr. Speaker, so the Boys Club...
Sorry, I can't hear what the Minister's saying, and in fairness, we've put the urgent question in which we can hear the Minister. Look, I'm proud of this Parliament, I'm proud of this country, so I do want to hear it, Minister.
So alongside this key step, Mr. Speaker, the government's priorities will continue to be helping families with the cost of living, including through protecting the public finances. The government's taking action to bear down on prices at the pump, and in November we extended the 5p per litre cut in fuel duty for a further 5 months. Right now, petrol and diesel are 11p per litre cheaper than under plans inherited from the previous government. Some fuels have been more impacted than others by this conflict. We recognise that, and the government also recognises the pressures being faced by drivers and other fuel users. That is exactly why we are introducing a package worth over £400 million, which combines broad support for motorists with targeted support for sectors most exposed to and affected by higher fuel prices. And yesterday, the Prime Minister made clear that we will not increase fuel duty this year. The temporary 5p cut will be extended until the end of the year. And taken together, the government's decisions will save the average motorist over £120 this year compared to plans inherited from the previous government. But we also recognise, Mr. Speaker, that farmers face substantially increased costs on fertilisers and fuel, and that's why we're going further, cutting the duty rate on red diesel by over 1/3 per litre to the lowest rate in over 20 years, and that, of course, will help other users of red diesel too. And then when it comes to road haulage, this sector, as members will recognise, is vital for transporting goods right across the country, and recognising that key role and the increased costs that the sector is facing, we are introducing a 12-month holiday for vehicle excise duty for the majority of heavy goods vehicles. This will save, Mr. Speaker, a typical HGV over £600, up to £912 on some vehicles, on top of the savings that I just described when it comes to fuel duty. So, Mr. Speaker, to conclude, this is one part of support for households and businesses. It combines universal support for motorists with targeted support for those most affected by higher fuel prices. And my right honourable friend, the Chancellor, will update the House later on today on further support measures for households and businesses.
Chancellor
Mr. Speaker, may I begin by agreeing with you and to say that how disrespectful it is that this U-turn on fuel duty has already been released to the media earlier this week. The news was plastered across national newspapers on Monday, and the Chancellor then conducted a visit to a petrol station yesterday with journalists. but it has taken until today for this House to be updated. This is a pattern, Mr. Speaker, including, of course, the relentless briefings before the budget last year about tax measures and fiscal forecasts. You would think a government with so little support amongst its own backbenchers would have more respect for this place. Mr. Speaker, this change to fuel duty is yet another humiliating U-turn from a Chancellor and Prime Minister whose authority is shot. The Chancellor fought us tooth and nail on this issue. The Conservative Party has been campaigning for a fuel duty freeze for months. The Chancellor repeatedly rejected those calls, creating unnecessary uncertainty for motorists and businesses. Why did it take her so long to realise that putting up fuel duty during an energy crisis is a bad idea? Does the Chancellor really expect us to believe that this is all only happening, as she has suggested, because of better growth? Let's be clear, Mr. Speaker. The Chancellor has been pointing to the slight upward revision in the IMF's growth forecasts earlier this week. That forecast was for growth of 1.0%. But until April, the IMF were forecasting growth this year of 1.3%. So where is the supposed growth dividend? And perhaps the Honourable Lady could address that momentarily. Is the Chancellor seriously suggesting that the outlook is better now compared to how it looked at the last fiscal event? And on wider measures, Mr. Speaker, will the Minister confirm whether what has also been briefed to the press, not to this House, that HMRC mileage rates are to be changed? Mr. Speaker, let's be clear. This is a government lurching from one U-turn to the next. Their mismanagement has left our economy weak. The reality is they're in no position to support people through these cost-of-living pressures because they have mismanaged the economy. They have no credibility left, and clearly they have no respect for this House.
Mr. Speaker, put simply, as I said, his party had motorists hurtling full speed towards higher fuel costs. It's only because of the action that this government has taken that we've applied the brake to the hikes that his party would have introduced. They would have introduced, Mr. Speaker, higher costs. We're keeping the freeze on fuel duty and protecting millions of motorists right across this country. And exactly as I said, we're taking further measures when it comes to red diesel and for HGV drivers as well. And this is on top, Mr. Speaker, of additional action that we're taking on the cost of living. The Shadow Chancellor and I saw each other in the studios early this morning when I was out there talking about the free unlimited bus travel for children that we're going to be. The Chancellor is going to be updating on this earlier today.
Sorry. Just say to the Minister, I don't think it's a good example that we was in the studios rather than telling this out. It's confirming my problem that that Sky or BBC is more important than the backbenchers who've been elected by constituents across this country are hearing it second-hand. It is not acceptable. So don't think it's a bonus to tell the House now.
Speaker, the Chancellor will be coming along to the House later along today, and she's going to...
Order. I think the point I was making was that you said that you were doing the studios. You're here now. I think it should have been here first. Do we both agree, Minister?
Mr. Speaker, my apologies. I was intending to say just then that the Chancellor will come to the House and will give a full statement on exactly everything, including the matters that we are discussing today. I'm sorry, Mr. Speaker, that the Shadow Chancellor is so upset and so appalled by the recent growth figures. I am in the business of talking this country up rather than down, and indeed I'm grateful to him for highlighting that growth has been revised up. Interest rates are coming down, inflation is coming down, real wages are going up. And as I said, Mr. Speaker, this is because of the prudent decisions that this government has taken, all of which is allowing us to take further action when it comes to the cost of living. But this action that we're taking in relation to fuel duty is very, very important, and it's going to save millions of motorists lost money right across this country. I will address, Mr. Speaker, the point on HMRC mileage rate. The Chancellor will come to this House, as I said, later on and talk about the full package.
Liam Bird, Chair of the Business Committee.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for facilitating this statement. I welcome the announcements on fuel duty, but I didn't hear the Chief Secretary say anything about remedies for the new costs on drivers of electric vehicles. Those new costs imposed at the last budget are suppressing demand for electric vehicles in our country to such an extent that UK automakers are having to subsidise demand by £5 billion a year. That is imperiling the future of UK automakers. It is imperiling the target of doubling automotive production by 2035. So can we have a statement about what the government is going to do to reform the ZEV mandate and actually get in place a plan that leads to a thriving auto industry and not a dying auto industry?
Mr. Speaker, my honourable friend makes a very important point, and I know how passionate he is about exactly these issues. He refers to changes that were made at budget, and they were made with the best of intentions and from the point of view of encouraging the use of electric vehicles in this country. I believe the Chancellor may be saying something on that later on today.
Daisy Cooper, Liberal Democrat spokesperson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Like so many Labour government announcements, the extension of the fuel duty relief later this year is too little, too late. And when we look around the world, other countries are acting now. Other countries are cutting fuel duty now. Other countries are cutting public transport costs now. And that is why we Liberal Democrats continue to call on the government to cut fuel duty and public transport costs now. So what message does the Minister think it sends to people that they'll take action later in the year when they are feeling the pain in their pockets right now? When it comes to farmers, Mr. Speaker, the government will be aware that the cost of fertiliser is going through the roof and world prices are up by 44%. So when the Minister says that there will be a further cut to red diesel, can I ask the Minister what assessment her government has made of the cumulative impact of the war in Iran on farmers? Because it's clear to me that this cut in red diesel will not touch the sides when the cost of fertiliser is rocketing through the roof.
Minister.
Mr. Speaker, the honourable member makes a really important point about the costs that farmers are facing, but that's exactly why we're taking the steps that we're taking in relation to red diesel, which is going to cut the duty by a third, more than a third, and it's the lowest rate in over 20 years. And as I said just earlier, Mr. Speaker, that doesn't just help farmers, of course, that's going to help other sectors too, including in relation to freight. But I'm afraid, Mr. Speaker, as is so often the case, we hear suggestions from the Liberal Democrats, cut this, cut that, try and bring things down. The reality, the reality is that these things are never funded. And if you're going to manage, you manage the finances.
Minister, sorry. The member has asked the question. I want respect given to the Minister when she's answering the question, please.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The point is that you have to manage the public finances in a responsible way. You can't put measures in place which are not fully funded. And I wish that in some of these proposals that were being put forward, they were adequately backed up by fully funded proposals.
Jim McMahon.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. These are welcome announcements, and I should say to welcome the Chief Secretary to her place. The government also has a very important convening power. And one thing that residents in Oldham raise all the time is just how much they pay for car insurance when compared to other areas. And for low-paid workers, particularly those that need it for business and pay that additional premium, it is a lot of money going out every single year above and beyond what neighbouring areas will pay. So can I ask the Chief Secretary to convene the insurance industry together and see what can be done to finally address this postcode lottery?
Minister.
Mr. Speaker, my honourable friend raises a really important issue, and I'd like to thank him for all the work which I know that he's done in this space, exactly from the point of view of trying to bring down the costs that people across the country are paying. In my old role as Economic Secretary to the Treasury, I was indeed closer to the work of the insurance sector and the work which the current Economic Secretary is now taking forward to try and ensure that prices are brought down. But I'm more than happy to convene with the new Economic Secretary and take forward the work that he suggests.
Thank you, Speaker. Obviously, the Minister is not aware that the previous Conservative government froze fuel duty for 14 years. Otherwise, she wouldn't be coming along. And some of us lobbied for the government of the day to actually abolish the escalator, but we didn't do it. However, could I ask her one key question, and that is, with the rise in the wholesale price of fuel at the pumps, how much extra money has the Treasury obtained as a result?
Mr Speaker, I'm afraid that the honourable member has entirely missed the fact that the plans that his government left in place would have meant that fuel duty would have gone up. And it is only because of the action that this government is taking that means that millions of motorists across the country will save money.
Justin Mathers.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. Can I welcome the efforts to support drivers at the petrol pumps? But it's obvious that this has not led to an increase in demand in the sales of electric vehicles. As the Chair of the Select Committee has already said, the automotive sector is facing a real crisis because of the Z mandate. I was at the Vauxhall plant in my constituency last week. There isn't the consumer demand there. There isn't going to be the consumer demand there to meet the escalating demands of the Z mandate. Can the Treasury please use their convening power across government to bring forward the review of the Z mandate?
Minister.
Mr Speaker, I appreciate, as I said earlier in response to my honourable friend, that this is a really important issue, and I know indeed what an important issue it is to my honourable friend and in his constituency as well. And as I said, I'm more than happy to take this up, and I'll discuss this with the Exchequer Secretary.
David Chapman.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. Increased fuel costs are a real pain point in a constituency like mine. Rural households that depend on their cars spend nearly £800 a year more on fuel than people who live in urban areas. So will the government listen again to the Liberal Democrats' demands for an immediate 10p cut in fuel duty that would bring down pump prices by 12 pence per litre?
Minister.
Mr Speaker, I think these suggestions are being made with the best of intentions, but with the deepest respect to the honourable member, this is all motherhood and apple pie. You have to be able to say where this money is going to come from if you want to do these nice things.
Dean Sullivan.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. Can I thank the Minister and my right honourable friend, the Chancellor, for recognising the important role that hauliers and freight play in our national economy and our local economies. The steps announced yesterday are a huge support to 3,500 people in my constituency who work in transport and logistics, and these are the people that keep our shelves stocked and our economies moving. But can I ask that the Minister liaises with her colleagues in other government departments to look at what other support could be made available for the logistics sector, including improved welfare facilities?
Mr Speaker, my honourable friend raises a really important issue in relation to hauliers and indeed the road haulage sector. That's why what we're talking about today is so critical when it comes to the cost that hauliers are paying and vehicle excise duty, which of course is on top of the changes that we're making to fuel duty to save hauliers money. And that is part of our recognition of the really critical role that hauliers play in costs, including of consumer goods. So this all fits together, and I recognise how important it is to her constituency.
Harriet Baldwin.
Thank you very much, Mr Speaker. And rural drivers in West Worcestershire will be delighted that the Chief Secretary has seen the political reality, which is that it would have been mad to put another 5 pence on petrol on the 1st of September. But could she also explain something else that would seem very, very inexplicable to my constituents, which is why we are not allowing oil and gas extraction from our own basin, but we are allowing an increase in terms of Putin-produced oil and gas.
Yeah.
Minister.
Mr Speaker, I'm grateful to the honourable member for her question, but I would ask her by reply that if it was so mad, why was it her party's intention to do exactly that when it comes to fuel duty? On oil and gas, we've been very clear that oil and gas will play a part in our fuel mix for years and years to come.
Adam Thompson.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. The Tories oversaw the only parliament in history where living standards were lower at the end than they were at the start. This government, by contrast, got wages up more in a year than the Tories did in a decade, with growth and inflation rates better than forecast. Does the Chief Secretary agree with me, then, that our economic plan is the best possible when it comes to delivering for my constituents in Erewash, very much including their interests as motorists?
Minister.
Mr Speaker, I'm grateful to my honourable friend for his question, and it's because of these fiscally responsible choices that the Chancellor has made, that we've seen growth going up, we've seen real wages up, we've seen inflation down and interest rates down as well. And look, these things do not happen by accident. They're because of the fiscally responsible way that the Chancellor is managing our economy. And that is fiscal responsibility for a purpose, that purpose being to support working people right across this country.
Charlotte Shelburne. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, may I first of all welcome the Right Honourable Lady to her new role in the Cabinet. She was an excellent colleague when she was on the NATO Parliamentary Assembly, and it doesn't surprise me that she's the first to ever to make it. So it's in that spirit, Mr. Speaker, that I hope to be able to help the Right Honourable Lady in marking her career out, because 90% of my constituency is rural, and fuel increases do worry people, and they don't put that money into the economy because they don't know where it's going to go. So could the Right Honourable Lady do something which should have been done under the last Conservative government, but she has an opportunity under this Labour government? Let's just say we're not putting these false figures for raising fuel duty in, because it never happens, and it would be a much better boost to the economy if people had certainty about their fuel costs.
Minister.
Mr. Speaker, I'm very grateful indeed to the Honourable Member for his kind comments, and I appreciate where he's trying to go with his remarks. But what we are doing with this announcement is saving the average motorist over £120 this year compared to the plans that we inherited, and in saying, as the Prime Minister did, that we are going to extend the cut until the end of the year, until the 31st of December. We are trying to give people that bit of certainty and that bit of reassurance, because we recognise that family budgets are really stretched at the moment, and indeed that is the reason why we're taking this measure, but plenty of other measures too, to try and help people with the cost of living.
Patricia Ferguson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Does the Chief Secretary agree with me that it's right that we didn't rush into the Iran war, and it's right that our government's plans and actions to support households are responsive to changing events, rather than being knee-jerk reactions which end up causing more damage to our economy in the longer term?
Minister.
Mr. Speaker, I'm grateful to Honourable Friend for those comments, and I think it just highlights again that the party opposite would have raced to war. And when I said that earlier, Mr. Speaker, they all, and they're doing it again, look, they're shaking their heads at me. The reality is the leader, well, okay, so either of two things are true. So either the leader of the opposition said that she would have taken us into the conflict, and she didn't mean it, in which case that's really confused, frankly, or she said it and she meant it, in which case that is demonstrative of really catastrophic judgment. But I would say, Mr. Speaker, that either of those things, be it catastrophically bad judgment or indeed deep confusion, neither of those things are ideal qualities on someone that wants to run the country.
The Chamberlain.
Mr. Speaker, the Government has repeatedly pointed out to the Fuel Finder website as the best way to keep prices low through competition. But in my own constituency of North East Fife, costs have gone up so much that there's basically no variation between the pumps. And those high prices are crippling for everyone, but particularly local businesses like the fish merchants from the East Neuk, who go far and beyond North East Fife to deliver to customers directly. Driving isn't avoidable for a constituency like mine. And the Government is obviously not looking at the Lib Dem proposals, but why don't the Government offer meaningful support beyond red diesel in rural constituencies? What about EV charging, for example, where often in constituencies like mine, people have to charge away from home because they need their car to get about the constituency?
Mr. Speaker, I'm grateful to the Honourable Member for those comments, and not least the reference. We are, I should say, supporting motorists in a meaningful way. But it's really important. She mentions the CMA's Fuel Finder scheme. Now, the intention of that is to save households that own a car around, it could be up to £40 a year. And she's absolutely right that the key principle behind that is about competition. And we know that competition is the way that we get to greater choice and indeed lower prices for consumers.
Where do we go? David Mundell of
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Can the Chief Secretary reassure me that the Treasury does really understand that in rural areas the cost of fuel doesn't just relate to what motorists pay for driving? It affects everything that is on sale in the shops, all goods and services provided, and therefore, rather than trying to put caps on the cost of things that are on sale in shops, the best way in rural areas to help keep costs down is to keep fuel costs down.
Minister.
Mr. Speaker, I'm grateful to the honourable member for those comments. But I have to tell him that we are not attempting to cap the prices that you see in supermarkets, nor were we intending to. What is happening is that the Chancellor is having discussions with supermarkets, as indeed she is with other sectors, with a view to putting downwards pressure on prices and helping people with the cost of living. Because, as I've said repeatedly, we on this side of the House recognise that there's a cost of living crisis out there, not least because of the inheritance that we receive from the party opposite, and we are seeking to help people with those costs.
Mr. Speaker, can I thank my right honourable friend for recognising and supporting hauliers and logistics companies like the Malcolm Group, the UK's leading independent provider of third-party logistics services, who are based in my constituency and support many hundreds of jobs across Paisley and Renfrewshire South. They play such an important role in keeping our shelves stocked and our economies running. But can I echo calls made by my honourable friend, the member for Bathgate and Linlithgow, for us to go further in supporting greater welfare facilities for their drivers? And can I also ask that she make some comment on the safety of logistics staff who too often are manning vehicles that are being targeted by criminals?
Mr. Speaker, I'm glad to hear that these measures are going to help the Malcolm Group in my honourable friend's constituency, as indeed they will hauliers right across the country. But my honourable friend, as indeed have others too, Mr. Speaker, raises a really important point around welfare, and indeed I think she was alluding to freight crime. And so this is something that I know has been discussed at length in this House. It's something that I'm particularly interested in, given the nature, too, of my constituency. I know that the government is taking forward action to seek to deal with to freight crime and indeed on welfare too, but I'm more than happy to convene a meeting with other ministers and indeed my honourable friends in relation to this issue.
Sarah Patchett.
Very much, Mr. Speaker. Does the Minister agree with me that one of the government's main responsibilities is to provide energy security for its citizens? And as a nation resplendent with our own resources, why will this government not issue more licences to drill in the North Sea for oil and gas, which would make us energy sufficient and therefore have a knock-on effect at the pumps?
Mr. Speaker, the best way to get to energy security is by doing exactly what the Secretary of State for Energy is doing at the moment, and the push towards renewables. I have to tell her, I'm afraid, that new licences in the North Sea wouldn't bring new oil and gas on stream for another 10 years. So that really is the wrong solution.
Chris Hinchcliffe.
Mr. Speaker, the freeze and fuel duty will be a relief to drivers in North East Hertfordshire, but part of the reason why this is such a problem is because after the party opposite's last stint in government, public transport was left virtually non-existent in rural communities like mine. We've discussed earlier this week the enormous cost of HS2, over £100 billion. If we were investing that scale of money in bus services, we could provide a vastly improved network across the whole country for decades to come. So will the government learn the lessons of the current crisis and redirect our public transport spending towards the journeys we need to make in our day-to-day lives?
Mr. Speaker, my honourable friend raises a really important point about the critical nature of bus services to the entirety of the country. And that's exactly why we're providing over £3 billion for buses over the next 3 years to cap fares at £3 and indeed to maintain and improve services as well. So that includes funding for local authorities so that they can put in place initiatives when it comes to local fares if they wish to do so, as I believe the North East Combined Authority has done. But we're also making reforms, Mr. Speaker, when it comes to bus franchising, which will allow new and better services too.
And Ambassador Chetty.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I just want to come back to what the Minister said earlier on about the war in Iran. She knows full well that the Leader of the Opposition did not say that she would take us into this conflict, and she knows full well that the operation was a no-fawn operation, and there was never an opportunity for the UK to be involved. And if she doesn't know that, she should go and speak to the defence team and get up to date with the details. But on that, I think as a cheek, considering that the government has just decided it's going to row back on its pressure that it's going to put on Russia. So can she explain exactly why, given her media round this morning, which didn't explain this, exactly why the government has decided to exempt oil and oil products that originate from Russia under Commodity Code 2709 or from 2710?
Mr. Speaker, I wholeheartedly reject any accusation or idea whatsoever that we are somehow going soft on Russia and on Putin. That is completely wrong. And the new package of sanctions that we've introduced are stronger today.
Sorry. I told the front bench, and I'm telling the back bench, you've had the courtesy of being able to ask a question. I want you to hear the answer, and I need to hear the answer as well, Minister.
The package of sanctions that are in place today is stronger than the package of sanctions that was in place last week. We have a world-leading sanctions regime in this country. At the moment, we have more than 3,300 sanctions of Russian entities, businesses, individuals, ships. The list goes on and on. And why does it go on and on? It's because of our steadfast support for Ukraine.
Speaker, Scotland is an energy superpower, and it's particularly galling therefore for constituents and businesses in my own constituency, which is a 2.5-hour drive end to end, and where road vehicles are an absolute necessity to conduct daily life, to face the prices that they're currently facing. Will the government commit to using the hundreds of millions of pounds of extra tax revenue they've got in VAT to a VAT freeze for the duration of this current crisis?
Mr. Speaker, I won't commit to that, no.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Whilst it's good news that the Chancellor has been forced into another humiliating U-turn over her increase in fuel duty, this just delays the increase until the end of the year. But the cost of living is surging and families are feeling the pinch in every aspect of their lives. So why won't the government simply put people and businesses, give them the certainty they need and cancel the fuel duty increase altogether?
Mr. Speaker, there's absolutely nothing humiliating about taking action that the Chancellor is taking, the Prime Minister is taking, to protect millions of motorists across this country. And again, I'm afraid I have to remind him, the plans that we inherited from the previous government would have seen motorists paying more.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I welcome this latest U-turn by the Chancellor to freeze fuel duty, which will help my constituents. And I also welcome the cut in duty in red diesel to help our farmers. The government's carbon border adjustment mechanism comes into effect on the 1st of January. This will increase further the cost of fertiliser, which in turn will push up the price of food. So will the Chief Secretary undertake a review of that carbon border adjustment mechanism to protect all our constituents from further food price increases?
Minister.
Mr. Speaker, I'm grateful for that intervention, and particularly the highlighting of the moves that we're making when it comes to red diesel, because he mentions the fertiliser costs. Now, we know that those substantially increased fertiliser costs, but also fuel, are hurting farmers. We know that, and that's exactly why we're taking the measures that we are when it comes to red diesel. So cutting the duty rate by over a third per litre, from just over 10 pence to just to 6.5 pence, which, as I said previously, is the lowest rate for over 20 years.
Mr. Speaker, and can I warmly welcome the Minister to her new role. My rural North Cornwall constituency doesn't have a regular or reliable bus service. It doesn't even have a single mainline train station. So my constituents are forced to rely on their cars to get to school, work, care for relatives, not to mention the transport of goods. I welcome this modest freeze, but please will the Minister meet with me to discuss North Cornwall being part of the government's rural fuel duty relief scheme. And while we're there, perhaps I can explain how our excellent Lib Dem proposals are all fully costed.
Mr. Speaker, I'm very grateful to the honourable member. I may ask that our meeting, when indeed we do meet, as I'm happy to do so, is fully focused on the matters at hand.
Hadley Thomas.
Mr. Speaker, having worked in the oil industry, I understand the flow of oil products around the world quite well, and it's unquestionable that the government has eased the prospect of Putin's oil flowing into the UK's oil market. That's beyond doubt. So 2 questions to the Minister. One, can she explain the Treasury's calculation of the extent to which they think this move may benefit UK motorists? Can she explain why the government has decided to do this? And can she tell us what she thinks the cost will be to the government's integrity and whether it's worth it?
I assume he means, Mr Speaker, when he says to do this in relation to the licences in the sanctions regime. Yeah, okay, just clarifying. Look, these licences are specific, they are targeted, and they're going to be reviewed on a very regular basis. The reason, and he'll know, given that he understands the flows of oil so well, he'll know that licences are a very, very common part of the sanctions regime. So the reasons that these licences, the reasons that they're being put in place is such that we can stage the impact on the economy. And indeed, if you look at what the European Union is doing in relation to these issues, they're going to achieve a full ban by the end of 2026. They too are staging the impact. So this is a sensible measure when it comes to our economy. But what is not in doubt, what is totally beyond, is the fact of our steadfast support for Ukraine, as I said, and the pressure that we are continuing to put with our international allies on Vladimir Putin.
That completes the urgent question. Let the front benches change over. Come to business questions. Shadow Leader of the House, Jessie Norman.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. Will the Leader give the House the forthcoming business?
Leader.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. The business for the week commencing the 1st of June will include Monday the 1st of June, second reading of the Health Bill, Tuesday the 2nd of June, Committee of the Whole House on the Armed Forces Bill, Wednesday the 3rd of June, remaining stages of the Railways Bill, Thursday the 4th of June, a general debate on Pride Month, Friday the 5th of June, the House will not be sitting. The provisional business for the week commencing the 8th of June includes Monday the 8th of June, Committee of the Whole House of the Steel Industry Nationalisation Bill, Day 1, Tuesday the 9th of June, conclusion of the Committee of the Whole House and remaining stages of the Steel Industry Nationalisation Bill, Wednesday the 10th of June, remaining stages of the Cyber Security and Resilient Network and Information Systems Bill, Thursday the 11th of June, general debate on the legacy of Joe Cox, and Friday the 12th of June, the House will not be sitting.
Jessie Norman.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. Mr Speaker, it's famously true that our present Prime Minister gets 100 times more animated and passionate about the performance of his football club every weekend than he does about trivial details of social, economic or foreign policy, and still more so when it comes to defeating the enemy from Manchester. So one would have to have a heart of stone, Mr Speaker, not to congratulate the Prime Minister on the success of Arsenal Football Club in winning the Premier League. I noticed the astonishing lack of reaction from the other side. As we United fans say, only 11 more Premiership wins to go, and Mikel Arteta will still be one short of Alex Ferguson. In this World Cup year, we remember with deep warmth and affection the heroes of 1966. I refer, of course, to the band of brothers who were so inspired by England's World Cup victory that they set up Westfields Football Club in Hereford. And I pay special tribute to the legend that is Andy Morris, not ignoring his brilliant wife, Sandra, who has been synonymous with Westfields ever since. Now, Mr Speaker, whatever happens in Makerfield, it seems inevitable that there will soon be a leadership contest in the Labour Party. The markets are spooked, the pundits are pontificating, the pollsters are rampant. But amid all the media speculation, there is one candidate, one extraordinary dark horse, who has not yet even been mentioned. That is why I am delighted in relation to the leadership of the Labour Party to announce my strong support in his bid for the top job for the Leader of the House. Colleagues will have noticed a certain coyness from the Leader about his own position last week in Business Questions. Make no mistake, Mr Speaker, that's the clear sign of a man preparing to throw his hat into the ring. For months now, I have lived myself with I must admit, a secret fear that the government will have a reshuffle and the Leader of the House will be relegated from the light of the chamber back into the Stygian depths of the Labour Whip's office. Luckily, the Prime Minister has remained far too weak even to contemplate a reshuffle. But I ask colleagues across this House, and especially on the Labour benches, to contemplate that hideous prospect, that drastic loss of warmth and wit and wisdom from these proceedings. As Ben Jonson said of Francis Bacon, when he spoke, the fear of everyone was that he would make an end. Now, some foolish and ill-advised people will say that this leadership bid is an improbable one, possibly even in this age of Botox, TikTok and Justin Trudeau, that a Prime Minister should be constructed on more youthful, foolish, inexperienced and, dare I say it, sleeker lines, to which I cry shame, Mr. Speaker, and fie upon these unimaginative gloomsters and naysayers. What fools they are. It's precisely that apparently diffident Clark Kent exterior that makes my candidate, our candidate, such a politically electrifying prospect in a world in which a Labour Chancellor of the Exchequer can seriously advance the total economic shambles of supermarket food price caps. Any move is on the table. The Leader of the House can therefore immediately become Leader of the Labour Party. It's simple common sense. We barely even need to change the name. I have to know that under my steady hand, the leader's Labour leadership campaign is ready to roll. The website is in hand, the baseball caps and T-shirts have been ordered. As Hilaire Belloc says of Lord Lundy, the stocks were sold, the press was squared, the middle class was quite prepared. Donors are falling over themselves in order to associate themselves with this extraordinary political intervention. The one crucial remaining question is what campaign slogan we should use. We thought about common sense with Campbell. Campbell for the country, all in for Allen. But there are two slogans with which I think we really cannot fail. And when he responds, I know the leader will want to take the opportunity of formally launching the campaign himself from the dispatch box, but perhaps he can also indicate which of these two slogans he prefers. Is it to be, yes, we Campbell, channeling the spirit of Barack Obama, or possibly, more inclusively, still, make Britain Campbell again? A nation awaits, Mr. Speaker. So may we have a debate in government time on this vital question.
Leader of the House, but just to remind the House, the most important game is being played on Sunday between Bolton Wanderers and Stockport. Good luck with Bolton. Come on, Leader.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And I see the leader's had his Weetabix again this morning. First of all, Mr. Speaker, can I extend my sympathies to the family and of Lance Bombardier, Ciara Sullivan, who lost her life in a tragic incident last week. It reminds us of the price sometimes paid by the brave men and women who serve our country so very well indeed. It's also, Mr. Speaker, tomorrow the 9th anniversary of the horrific Manchester Arena attack, which claimed the lives of 22 people and left many more injured. And I'm sure all those affected remain in the thoughts of the whole House. And last year, Mr. Speaker, Martin's Law received royal assent, which delivered on our commitment to strengthen the security of public events and venues and help prevent another tragedy from happening. I want to thank all the campaigners who were pivotal in delivering this legislation. Mr. Speaker, at the end of last week, the Treasury announced an independent review on access to banking to assess how changes to in-person banking services are affecting customers. The review will be chaired by Richard Lloyd, who many members will know. This is an issue, Mr. Speaker, which is regularly raised by members with me, and the government is committed to ensuring that everyone has access to the services that they need. Fly tipping is also an issue, Mr. Speaker, that members have raised with me frequently, and the government is listening, Mr. Speaker. Laws laid this week will require waste handlers to provide that they are qualified to transport waste. And we're tightening the net on waste criminals with tougher sentences for those illegally dumping waste and advanced background checks to put rogue operators out of business. Members will also be pleased that we're cracking down on high street crime, rogue barber shops, vape stores, mini-marts and sweet shops linked to organised crime. They'll face raids, closures and cash seizures under a new £30 million crackdown targeting money laundering, tax evasion and illegal working. which again, these are issues that have been raised in sessions such as these, Mr. Speaker, and therefore underlines the importance of the role that members play in influencing future policy and decision-making. Mr. Speaker, I also hope that members will be able to spend time in their constituencies over the recess and enjoy the warmer weather, hopefully, over the next bank holiday. And as an MP for a coastal constituency, I know how dangerous the sea can be, and I want to highlight the RNLI's annual Float to Live campaign. And this year's campaign is being fronted by Ewan Gray from Gateshead, who, with his brother Andrew, got caught in a notorious riptide off my constituency on Long Sands Beach in May last year. And I want to pay tribute to the volunteers of Cullercoats Lifeboat and Tynemouth Lifeboat, and indeed all the RNLI volunteers who tirelessly provide a critical service in coastal towns and villages across the UK. Let me turn, Mr. Speaker, to the remarks of the Right Honourable Gentleman, the Shadow Leader of the House. And I'm sure, as he acknowledged, that his gratitude for Arsenal beating Man City is genuine, coming from a dedicated Man United supporter. I'm sure it was genuine. He also reminds us of the heroes of 1966 and the last time that England won the World Cup. And I should remind the House that England has only ever won the World Cup under a Labour government. And therefore I look forward, Mr. Speaker, to the World Cup which starts shortly. On the other matter, which he seems preoccupied with, Mr. Speaker, about my candidature to be the Prime Minister, let me just say that there is no vacancy for a Prime Minister. But I do thank him for his endorsement, which I'm sure is well intentioned. But I should just warn the House, Mr. Speaker, that there's a double edge here, because every candidate which he has endorsed for the Tory leadership has either failed at the first hurdle or is failing in her leadership now.
Good morning. Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. A number of constituents continue to really struggle as a result of Capita's delays in processing their civil service pensions, many of them having been retired without income for months. And I do know the Paymaster General has been holding them to account in various ways, but with Capita continuing to miss its own deadlines, could we have an update from the Paymaster General about what progress is being made?
Mr. Speaker, as we've said before, these delays are unacceptable. It's not the service that people deserve, and resolving this is a matter of urgency. We mandated a deadline of the 30th of June 2026 for Capita to restore all civil service pension scheme service levels to standard contractual agreements, and the Government will continue to monitor this closely and press for swift action.
The Chamber Liberal Democrat spokesperson.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. I have to say my honourable friend, the member for Carshalton and Wallington, who usually is here for business questions, is probably very glad not to be given Arsenal's success. But it's been very good to see that in English football we are seeing teams succeed who have not succeeded for some time. But it was a different case in Scotland at the weekend, where I congratulate Celtic on winning the league again. But as the wife and mother of Heart of Midlothian supporters, it has been a very difficult week, and I do congratulate them on the amazing season that they had. And I thank the Leader of the House for providing us with the certainty of the business for the next sitting week. It seems to be the only certainty we have. Who knows where we will be after that? The Prime Minister may well still be in post, but it's no doubt that his fading authority is doing the country no favours. We have seen how the bond markets have reacted to this uncertainty and chaos, and I fear this government is becoming a little like HS2, moving more slowly and making things more expensive for people in this country. But while the government lays out its vision, we on these benches believe a crucial piece of the economic puzzle is still missing. We will continue to make the case for closer ties with our closest allies and trading partners in the European Union, and that's a policy that the Labour Party simply cannot quite make up its mind about. And I note that the former Secretary of State for Health has made his pro-EU stall abundantly clear, whereas their candidate in Makerfield seems a little more unsure, despite his previous representations. Now, the Prime Minister's trade deal with North Korea is impressive, and I do trust that he misspoke yesterday, but we Liberal Democrats think that a UK-EU customs union is the single best way to start fixing the profound damage done to the British economy since Brexit. And so I was disappointed that Labour MPs joined forces with Reform and the Conservatives to vote down our plans yesterday for a customs union. Those red lines are deeply damaging to our economy. So will the Leader of the House impress on the Prime Minister that whatever potential leadership rivals think, the government's EU reset bill must include steps to negotiate such a customs union, because we on this side of the House will keep coming back to that issue whenever we have the opportunity to do so.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. As the Prime Minister acknowledged in real time yesterday, he did misspeak about the trade deal, but he was absolutely clear about our relationship with Europe. There won't be a return to the customs union, the single market or freedom of movement, and the government came into office on that basis. We are clear, however, that it is in the national interest to be closer to Europe. It's good for us and it's good for Europe, it's good for our security, it's good for our economy. And as the Honourable Lady has said, there will be an EU reset bill coming through, and I'm sure she'll be able to put the points that she raises not just to debate but to the test of a vote.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Will the Leader of the House join me in congratulating Great Grimsby and Cleethorpes children's charity Sunflowers Action Group on winning, by popular poll on my Facebook page, a £2,000 donation from BACTA, the Amusements and Arcades representative body. Sunflowers provides activities, respite and trips for children with life-limiting illnesses, doing amazing work supporting families in my local area, and this donation will help them to continue to do just that.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I join my honourable friend in congratulating Sunflowers Children's Action Group on their brilliant work supporting children and their families and winning the vital funding. We're also taking action in this area, Mr. Speaker, with our Best Start in Life strategy, pledging to invest £1.5 billion over the next 3 years to support early years.
Bob Blackman, Chair of the Backbench Committee, re-elected unopposed.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And as we approach the end of the domestic football season, it's only right that we congratulate Aston Villa on winning the Europa League last night. And indeed, it's only a year ago that I was celebrating Tottenham winning the Europa League. So if I may say so, the most vital game on Sunday is Tottenham versus Everton, which may be... in terms of the Backbench Business Committee, I thank the House, obviously, for re-electing me. And I'm glad that on the order paper, I think we have 5 members of the committee to be reappointed to the committee. So on that basis, we're going to try and meet on Tuesday, Tuesday the 2nd of June, to consider the applications. I understand there are 11 new applications already to add to the 42 that we left when prorogation took place. I note that the Chairman of Ways and Means has indeed granted 2 of those debates in Westminster Hall to reduce our burden. I would therefore ask, obviously, the Leader for time as soon as possible in the Chamber for the Backbench Business Committee. And for those colleagues that are on the waiting list, the committee will make a decision on whether we clean out the waiting list or whether we continue with that existing waiting list. And I would ask colleagues not to reapply until such time as the committee has made that decision. Now, Mr. Speaker, you'll know that I've been a champion of homeless people throughout my parliamentary career. And I was delighted that the government eventually got through the abolition of the Vagrancy Act during the last session. However, there is a requirement for a statutory instrument to actually introduce that, to abolish the Vagrancy Act for good. Can the Leader therefore arrange for the relevant minister to make sure that statutory instrument is brought forward forthwith, so we can actually get away from a position whereby people that are homeless can be prosecuted for the fact they're homeless? This is absolutely unacceptable and needs to be consigned to the history book.
Mr. Speaker, I join the rest of the House in congratulating the honourable gentleman on his unopposed re-election as the chair of the Backbench Business Committee, but not just for the next year, Mr. Speaker, but for the rest of this Parliament. And I do sincerely look forward to continuing working with him. I will endeavour to give him and the committee as much forward notice of upcoming backbench days, but I would advise members to listen to his wise words about applications at the moment. and I'll certainly give consideration, as he requests, of time for using government time for some of the debates which are in the queue. The honourable gentleman is a staunch advocate for tackling homelessness and did successfully, I remind the House, lead a private member's bill through, and that's no mean achievement. I agree with him that no one should be criminalised for sleeping rough, and the Vagrancy Act has no place in a just society. We have committed to repealing it in full. On the statutory instrument, I'll draw it to the attention of the relevant minister, and I will get him the update that he seeks.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. According to recent media reports, the honourable member for Clacton has taken a £5 million gift from a billionaire living some halfway across the world. Without this Guardian investigation, we would be none the wiser, however, and there are no controls on gifts for those campaigning before a general election is called. I remain deeply concerned, as do my constituents, that there may be substantial funds making their way into British politics through the back door. Will the Leader of the House ask ministers to consider how the Representation of the People Bill could tackle undeclared cash gifts and donations?
Yeah. Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker, and I thank my honourable friend for his question. As he says, the Representation of the People Bill will give greater transparency and security around political donations, but I'll draw to the attention of the very able minister taking that bill through his concerns about perhaps the need to go further. The matters he refers to allude to very serious allegations, Madam Deputy Speaker, and I welcome the Parliamentary Commission for Standards looking into this matter.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. I recently visited the North Coats Shooting Club in my neighbouring constituency, where hundreds of my constituents gather every week to participate in their chosen sport. There are proposals, they tell me, to merge Section 1 and Section 2 certificates for the licensing of shotguns and rifles. They are very different in the context. So could the leader arrange for the minister to have a look at this and perhaps report back to the House?
Madam Deputy Speaker, I certainly will arrange for the minister to look at this and report back to him, indeed to the House. And I have to say, Madam Deputy Speaker, having had some responsibility for the issues previously in government which he raises, my view is that you don't have to be a shooter to value shooting as a sport, and indeed clubs in our local communities.
Alan Barron.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. Nobody should go to work never to return home. On Tuesday the 13th of January 2026, Kenny Campbell Smart went to work at Corby Steelworks and never returned home. Now that I've said his name, it'll be written down, recorded in Hansard, and his name will live on forever. Today we're joined in the gallery by Kenny's wife, Sally, and his son Kian, who are determined that no other family should go through what they've been through. In light of this, would the Leader of the House agree with them that we should do all we can to keep people safe at work, and that health and safety isn't red tape, it isn't bureaucracy, it isn't a barrier to growth, it's what keeps people safe at work? And in the name of Kenny, his community, his workplace and his family, we should strengthen these laws so it never happens again.
Yeah. Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. First of all, I'm sure the whole House will join me in extending our heartfelt condolences to Sally, Kian and all of Kenny's friends and family. My honourable friend is absolutely right that health and safety in the workplace is not an inconvenience. In workplaces, good health and safety practices do save lives, and I will ensure that the relevant minister writes to him to set out what further action the government intends to take.
John Lamont.
Thank you very much. Nurses are at the heart of our wonderful NHS. I was delighted that 2 nurses from NHS Borders recently gained national recognition by the Royal College of Nursing Scotland. ITU clinical nurse educator Karen Bacon was highly commended in the Learning and Practice Award category, whilst Michelle Brownlee, a healthcare support worker in the intensive therapy unit, was a runner-up in the Nursing Support Worker of the Year award. So will the leader join me in congratulating Karen and Michelle and pass on all of our thanks to our hard-working nursing staff in the NHS?
Deputy Speaker, I will indeed join the honourable gentleman in congratulating Karen and Michelle for their exceptional achievements. He's absolutely right to celebrate the work of all of our wonderful NHS nurses, and I'm sure the whole House will join me in giving them thanks for all the hard work that they do.
Matters.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. I'm sorry to say I've not been able to have the same enthusiasm as the Prime Minister has had in recent days. We have become at odds over a big issue, Arsenal's Premier League victory. But I think I would join with the majority of people in this country in wanting the Champions League final, which Arsenal are participating in, to be a success for English football. So it's very upsetting to see that actually that game will not be available free to air on the TV, and actually it's a moment for the nation to come together, get behind a great English football team and have victory in Europe. So can the Leader of the House do what he can to ensure that actually we get that game free to air for the nation to enjoy?
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. My honourable friend is absolutely right that it is right that such matches are available to people to watch for free. And I will raise his concerns with the Secretary of State for DCMS to see if there is anything that can be done.
Sir John Hayes.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. With the stealthy silence of knives and the deadly danger of guns in the wrong hands, crossbows cost lives. They cost the life of Louise Hunt and her sister Hannah, as the leader will know, who were murdered by such a weapon. And so I'm delighted that the government announced in March that it is going to ban the sale of crossbows and license new ones. That responds to calls that I made and others across the House made following that awful event. But we've heard little more. All we've heard, in fact, is that the government will consult on the detailed arrangements. No detail, however, of timetable, nothing about means or method. So will the Leader of the House update the House, or by means of a statement by the appropriate minister do so that we can be sure that there will be no hesitation, no obfuscation, no prevarication, for any of those things would cost more lives?
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. I just want to assure the right honourable gentleman that there will be no hesitation or prevarication, because the government is committed to this. But I would gently say to him, again, having had some experience myself, we can discuss these matters and get to a conclusion and all get to pretty much the same conclusion, but actually implementing it is often more difficult than many people think. And I would say that we shouldn't offer something which doesn't ultimately work. We need to make sure that it has the effect that the honourable members and right honourable members desire. So there is often a delay, but I will draw his remarks to the attention of the relevant minister and see if we can get that update that he seeks.
Jill German.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. I recently had the real pleasure of visiting Denby Youth Shed, led by the inspirational Scott Jenkinson. Youth sheds are youth-led, with young people in leadership roles shaping their own activities, ranging from upcycling old guitars to creating comfort packs for children going into care. The government has recently published the Youth Justice White Paper, where early intervention and improving consistency are clear priorities. Will the Leader of the House agree to a debate in government time on support for community-led youth organisations who are already engaging with our young people, so that ministers can outline how initiatives like youth sheds can access sustainable funding and be expanded across the country?
Very good. Madam Deputy Speaker. My honourable friend is absolutely right to champion the great work of youth sheds and community organisations like them. Their work is vital to support young people in our communities. And as she rightly points out, the Youth Justice White Paper sets out how we can make the justice system fairer and more consistent. I'll draw her attention to her remarks to the attention of the relevant minister and see if we can find time for such a debate.
And before I call for the next question, members should be aware that I'm aiming to finish these business questions around 12:15. So it's unlikely that we're going to get everybody in, even if the questions are very, very short. Rebecca Paul.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. I would ask whether the Leader of the House would join me in congratulating Jenny Rayner, MBE, who has managed to raise an amazing £2 million for a new wellbeing centre locally to support young people with mental health issues and to get them to a point where they have the support they need before crisis is reached.
We in Reigate, Redhill, Banstead and our villagers are so proud of what she has done and achieved in terms of raising this money and supporting our young people. So would you join me in congratulating her?
I'd absolutely join Madam Deputy Speaker in congratulating her. Last week was Mental Health Awareness Week, and it's vital that we continue to raise awareness of the signs and symptoms of depression and other mental health issues in young adults, and the exemplary work of people in our local communities underlines how important this is to keeping young people well.
Sarah Coombs.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. Angela and Terry are a couple in my constituency, and they were the proud owners of Otis, a little three-legged Shih Tzu dog. Angela, who's in her 80s, was walking Otis a few weeks ago when two Rottweilers got loose, savaged Otis terribly. Angela took him to the vets, paid thousands of pounds, but sadly Otis died. It's very brave of Angela and Terry to speak out. The community are up in arms. Please can we have a debate to talk about the owners of dangerous dogs, as it is the owners who are often the problem here, and who pays when one dog attacks another.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. And I thank my honourable friend for a very important question. This is an upsetting case, and I know other responsible pet owners will also be concerned about attacks in their communities. There are powers, Madam Deputy Speaker, under the Dangerous Dogs Act of 1991 to protect the public. And we've also reconvened the Responsible Dog Ownership Task Force to explore further measures. When those measures are clearer, then I'm sure the House will want to debate them.
Monica Harding.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. Would the Leader of the House join me in congratulating Waterham and Hersham Football Club in my constituency, which has secured promotion to the National League South for the first time in its history, having achieved an extraordinary 4 promotions in just 6 seasons. At a time of young people's mental health concerns and online harms, and I know the House will debate this in the future, can we give some time also to supporting grassroots football clubs and sports clubs as a diversion away from online harms and for better mental health, which Waterham and Hersham so well do?
Madam Deputy Speaker, I certainly congratulate the Waltham and Hersham Football Club because, again, like other clubs across our communities, they do such important work. They're at the heart of local communities, and particularly where they offer diversion activities for young people. I think they should be commended. But what she says about the importance of sport in local communities is exactly what the government is trying to do.
Imran Hussain.
Madam Deputy Speaker, last weekend's march saw vile, racist thugs, national figures, openly fanning the flames of hatred against British Muslim communities, saying things like, "It's time for many Muslims to leave this country. This is a war. We need to get ready to fight." There are much more vulgar and dangerous statements that I'm unable to repeat in this House. This incitement of hatred and violence against British Muslims in the heart of our capital should worry us all. So can I ask the Leader of the House if he will allow sufficient time for a proper debate to address the dangerously rising levels of Islamophobia, the protections for British Muslim communities and the consequences for those responsible.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. I absolutely condemn any disorder and inappropriate language used, whoever it comes from and whoever it is directed against. But the scenes of last weekend we don't want to see repeated. The government is absolutely determined to bear down on that. We are providing additional resources to protect places of worship, including mosques. The new legislation in the Crime and Policing Act will address large repeated protests, as well as protests outside places of worship. But my honourable friend has been around long enough to know that if he seeks perhaps an adjournment debate on these matters, then he will be amongst many others who will want to similarly raise these concerns.
Dr Andrew Morrison.
Madam Deputy Speaker, in his business statement, the Leader of the House rightly referred to fly-tipping waste criminals. Will he allow for a debate in government time to consider a different sort of waste perpetrated on our constituents, and that is that arising from so-called energy from waste plants, otherwise known as waste incinerators, which of course are more polluting than burning coal and for which the UK is already over-provisioned. We've got too many of these things, they're not wanted, and it's time for a moratorium. Can we have a debate on that?
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. I'll give the Right Honourable Gentleman a commitment that I'll raise it with the relevant ministers and see if we can find some time to debate these matters, should time allow.
Nick Smith.
Madam Deputy Speaker, my constituents continue to face delays in accessing driving tests post-COVID. The government's important consultation covers tackling bot activity, bulk and speculative bookings, and improving access to genuine test slots. Now, a driving instructor in Blaenau Gwent and Rumney has expressed his concerns about potential booking restrictions for driving instructors and issues around examiner recruitment. So can the Transport Minister please update the House and confirm that these issues are going to be considered in the round?
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. We have doubled the number of trainers for examiners and provided 120,000 additional tests between June of last year and January of this year, and also tightened up on the rules on who can actually book and reschedule tests to avoid exploitation by online bots and reselling. But I'll draw my honourable friend's remarks to the attention of a Transport Minister, and either he can seek a meeting with the Minister or indeed we'll get an update for the House.
Chris Law.
Madam Deputy Speaker, may I take this opportunity to congratulate both the SNP in Scotland in a historic 5th landslide election and to Plaid Cymru in a historic win in the Welsh Senate elections, bringing together the north of Ireland, Wales and Scotland has been represented by governments that not only believe in their people, but also unlocking a nation's potential by being independent nations in the future. However, Madam Deputy Speaker, unlike the north of Ireland, which has a legal mandate to hold a referendum on its future, Scotland does not share that legal mandate, and it's a glaring omission in the Scotland Act 1998. So can we have an urgent debate on the constitutional crisis the UK now finds itself in, where Scotland has spoken with the highest ever majority for independence parties, but is denied the democratic route. Sorry, I think we're in a democratic chamber here, but is denied the democratic route to express the will of the people of Scotland. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. The government has no plans to change the current position, and let me say to the honourable gentleman that if he's seeking a constitutional crisis, it won't be of our causing; it will be of the SNP's.
Patricia Ferguson.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. On the 26th of February, I raised with my right honourable friend my fears that the unreliability of the postal service might affect constituents in Glasgow West who wish to vote by post in the Scottish Parliament elections. Since then, I've been advised of a situation where a proxy vote application was received some days after the deadline, although the envelope was very clearly postmarked several days before the deadline. Will my right honourable friend assist me in arranging a meeting with the appropriate minister to discuss a simple amendment to the Representation of the People Bill that would grant returning officers limited discretion in such cases?
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. As my honourable friend will have heard, the representation of the People's Bill we're bringing forward has measures in it to increase the resilience of the proxy and postal voting systems, and that's a constant theme of the Defending Democracy Task Force. But if my honourable friend seeks a meeting with the relevant minister, then I'll help her to arrange one.
David Mundell.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. And can I begin by sending my commiserations to the family and friends of Scottish rugby legend Scott Hastings, who died recently at the age of only 61. Scott was an inspirational figure both on and off the pitch. I'm sure the Leader of the House shares my concern about the outbreak of Ebola, which is affecting both the Democratic Republic of Congo and Uganda at this time, with hundreds of people have already died. Could we have an oral statement when the House returns to hear what the UK is doing in relation to preventing the spread of this outbreak? The UK played a pivotal role in stopping the previous serious outbreak in Sierra Leone, and I'm sure must have much to offer by way of expertise in relation to this one.
Madam Deputy Speaker, and I certainly join the right honourable gentleman in his remarks about Scott Hastings. Rugby is not my sport, but I do recognise very much the contribution that Scott Hastings made, and we send our condolences to his friends and to his family. He raised a very important matter on the outbreak of Ebola. The UK government takes it very seriously indeed. We have, through the NHS, safe procedures in place in any such case of it coming to the UK, and specialist centres that where they can be looked after. But he raises the point about what are we doing to help other countries. The government is reacting quickly, Madam Deputy Speaker, and the Foreign Secretary has announced a further £20 million to help to contain the Ebola outbreak.
Gareth Snell.
Rachel Maskell.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. We're not quite alike, but there we are. Madam Deputy Speaker, the levels of congestion on Wigginton Road are unacceptable. The air quality is affected for residents, people are late for their hospital appointments, and also our whole city is snarled up because the hospital doesn't have a sufficient transport plan. Will he impress on the Secretaries of State for Health and Transport the need for hospital transport plans? And can we have a debate in government time on hospital-induced congestion?
Leader of the House.
My honourable friend is absolutely right to be concerned about traffic and congestion in her constituency. Responsibility for managing traffic on local roads, including those near hospitals, does rest with local authorities, but she's right that it's not just about local authorities, it's about making sure that everyone has a role to play, actually plays that role. So I'll raise it with the relevant Secretary of State as she asks.
Clive Jones.
Very much, Madam Deputy Speaker. The National Cancer Plan has many ambitious and urgently needed targets, but these will only be delivered when the government properly invests in the NHS workforce. And healthcare professionals and charities want clarity on when the government will commit to this. So can the leader urge his colleagues in the Department of Health and Social Care to update the House on when the workforce plan will be launched?
Madam Deputy Speaker, he raises an important point. The government is absolutely committed to making sure that we have the workforce in place to deliver the changes in the NHS that are absolutely necessary in cancer, but in other areas as well. We're delivering record investment. Waiting lists are down by over 400,000. I think that's the lowest drop for some considerable time, but I will raise his specific concerns about when with the Minister and get him a response.
Emma Lewell.
Madam Deputy Speaker, for years now I've been trying to help a constituent who is subject to repeated identity fraud via their NHS records. Meetings with ministers have been cancelled or refused. Questions and letters to the Home Office, Justice and Health Departments always result in the same response. It's not their responsibility, there's nothing they can do. This is impacting on my constituents' daily life in so many ways. Can my right honourable friend please use his good offices to help?
Madam Deputy Speaker, I'm sorry to hear of the experiences my honourable friend's constituents. If she lets me have the details, Madam Deputy Speaker, I will raise it with the relevant departments and see if we can get the answers that she seeks.
Sarah Ball.
Madam Deputy Speaker. I want to raise a case of gift card fraud. My constituent, Nigel Bannister, was recently given for the birthday present a gift card, but by the time he came to redeem it, the money had gone. Now, this is a rising trend where people are going in and taking a photograph and stealing the PIN details and reclaiming it before someone else can. And these are obviously publicly available in the supermarkets. So can I ask for a debate in the government's time about this rising trend, because it caused £18.5 million of loss in the years 23 to 24?
Good question. Deputy Speaker, this is a concerning matter that the honourable lady is absolutely right to raise. I will take it up with the relevant departments to see what level of awareness they have and what they intend to do about this. But should she seek an adjournment debate, then perhaps she can hear directly from a minister.
Michael Wheeler.
Deputy Speaker. A recently elected Reform Councillor in my Worsley and Eccles constituency believes the best way to regenerate Eccles, which he described as a problem area, is to turn it into the UK's Dubai. However, it might surprise him that the council has already brought the town centre into public hands, and during the consultation not one single actual resident raised the prospect of debacles. Our communities need regeneration led by genuine involvement of local people like that being delivered in Brookhouse and Peel Green through Pride in Place. Will the Leader of the House consider a debate on government time to ensure that local people lead in how their towns are regenerated?
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. My honourable friend is a great champion for regeneration in his area, and his commitment to that stand in stark contrast to the approach of the Reform Council that he refers to. As he will know and the whole House will know, the Government is already taking action to regenerate our high streets with a £5.8 billion Pride in Place funding to deliver for places like Eccles. But I will think about whether or not we can find some time to debate the success of that programme.
Sir Ashley Fox.
Deputy Speaker, in February I asked the Minister of State for Health about access to dentists in rural areas. The Minister said from the dispatch box that he would write to me with the numbers of how many more dental treatments had been provided in my constituency and Integrated Care Board. I was concerned when the Minister replied that Somerset ICB delivered 5,559 fewer NHS dental treatments in the 7 months to October 25 compared to the same period before the election. That is 4% fewer dental treatments in Somerset under Labour. So can we have a statement from the Minister to explain why dental services in Somerset are getting worse under this government?
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. I'm not sure the honourable gentleman should necessarily draw that conclusion, because he will be aware that the government is committed to improving access, but he will know that takes some time to turn around the system which we inherited. But he's right that if he gets information from ministers, he should get an update as well on the progress that we're making. And I'll make sure that he gets that from the relevant minister.
Leanham.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. I would like to pay tribute to Councillor Angela Loughran, who sadly passed away. She first represented the Manor Ward in '97, and for nearly 30 years she tirelessly worked for her residents. She was a true public servant, a previous teacher, and will be greatly missed by her friends, family and the wider Stafford community. Now, in a recent survey of more than 500 residents, 61% cited the return of an indoor market in Stafford as their top priority, and I'm campaigning with residents for that. A lively all-day destination that draws in people from across the town and beyond and will create local jobs. Would the leader grant a debate on the contribution of indoor markets to local economies in towns like Stafford?
Madam Deputy Speaker, I certainly join her in paying tribute to Councillor Angela Loughran. Local figures like her truly embody the spirit of the community that they serve. I also recognise the importance of the issue that she raises for the people of Stafford, and I'd encourage my honourable friend to apply for Westminster Hall debate on the impact indoor markets can have on local economies, because I'm sure there will be others who will share her enthusiasm and support for them.
Robert Jenrick.
A student on a night out is stabbed multiple times with a 21-centimetre long knife. He's lying in a pool of his own blood, literally drowning in his blood. The police come to the scene. Instead of doing everything that they can to save his life, they handcuff and arrest the lad because there's an accusation of racial abuse. This is a scandal. Will the Home Secretary come to the House and say what she's doing to investigate the way the police conducted this matter? And can we have a debate on two-tier policing, which is doing so much to undermine respect for the police and for the rule of law in this country?
Madam Deputy Speaker, the Right Honourable Gentleman raises an important and distressing matter. I assume that it is still an ongoing police investigation, and there are also ways in which the actions of the police, if they are as he describes it, can be investigated too. And I'm not going to comment on that, and I'm not going to interfere in that. But the Home Secretary takes absolutely seriously not just the issue of night crime, but also the protection of citizens, whoever they happen to be.
Dean Sullivan.
Madam Deputy Speaker, last weekend, West Lothian Dance World, founded and led by Hazel Saunders-Dunn, celebrated its 40th birthday with shows at the prestigious Usher Hall in Edinburgh. Dance World has given thousands of young people the chance to showcase their talent, refine their dance skills, build confidence and forge lifelong friendships over the years. Will the Leader of the House join me in congratulating West Lothian Dance World and wish all students and teachers every success for the next 40 years?
Madam Deputy Speaker. Absolutely join my honourable friend in congratulating West Lothian Dance World for their remarkable 40th year anniversary. And as she points out, dance is a brilliant way to support young people and ensure that they build their confidence. So I praise not just the students but also their teachers for their commitment, and I wish them every success in the future.
Peter Fortune.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. And whilst there's been some talk of the shenanigans of some minor football teams, it would be remiss of me not to mention the mighty Bromley FC, the only English Football League club blessed with a Conservative MP, who have been crowned champions of League Two, probably as a direct result. Madam Deputy Speaker, I recently met with Lorraine and Satvir at one of my surgeries, who are both Vodafone franchise holders and employ a lot of people in the local area. They signed a contract in good faith relating to fluctuation of commission rates, so that when Vodafone cut that commission rate by 50%, they were left out of pocket, and they felt that they were treated in bad faith. Could we have a debate looking at franchising regulations?
Speaker, I suggest that the honourable gentleman seeks an adjournment debate, because if that is happening in his constituency, it might be happening elsewhere, and I'm sure there will be other colleagues who would want to hear from directly from a minister on what the government intends to do.
Serena Brackenridge.
Speaker, will the Leader of the House join me in recognising the remarkable work of the Susan Vickers Foundation, changing lives for care-experienced families by a care-experienced team, and now including free rail travel and cinema access thanks to partnership with L&R, West Midlands Railway and Cineworld? And will he also commend Rethink Mental Illness and all community groups involved at the hub at Wolverhampton Station as they mark their first year helping thousands across our city?
And I'll certainly join my honourable friend in recognising the work of the Susan Vickers Foundation, Rethink Illness and the hub at Wolverhampton Station, and everyone else involved. Last week was Mental Health Awareness Week, and this year's theme was action. And charities and community organisations play a huge role in supporting those struggling with mental illness, and I thank everyone involved for their commitment and their service.
Dr Ellie Chowns.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. Earlier this month, I was delighted to at last receive a response from the Department for Work and Pensions to a letter I'd written them on the 25th of November last year, raising a constituent's case. More than a 5-month delay when the original acknowledgement had said that they aimed to get back to you within 15 days. These delays are unacceptable, and this is by no means an isolated case, had multi-month delays on several other cases. So can we have an update, please, from the Leader of the House on what the government is doing to improve departmental complaint processing times so that constituents and MPs can get a response within a reasonable time frame?
Madam Deputy Speaker, the Honourable Lady will know that I'm very keen that departments do respond in time and give full responses to MPs, because that is part of the job that they have. Of course, some departments will find it more difficult to respond, because not just because of sometimes the complexity of issues, but also the number of letters and PQs and things that they get on these matters. But I'll draw her remarks to the attention, not just of that department, but indeed to other departments as well, because we do constantly remind them of the need to maintain a standard.
Lillian Jones.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. According to a CBI report published in 2025, the contribution of the wood panel industry to the UK economy was at £1.1 billion GVA. Now, given that significant contribution, will my right honourable friend make time for a debate on how the government's industrial strategy will support the UK timber and wood sector, including measures to strengthen domestic supply chains, increase the use of sustainable British timber in construction and support rural jobs and net zero ambitions?
Deputy Speaker, my honourable friend is absolutely right to raise these matters on behalf of her constituents, but other rural areas as well. I will raise these with the relevant minister and get an update from them on what the government intends by way of progress on this matter.
Alison Bennett.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. Yesterday, the Climate Change Committee laid out in stark terms the risks that we face as a country if we do not tackle the impact of climate change. One of those was drought. This is especially pertinent in mid-Sussex and across the South East, which is extremely water scarce. And South East Water are already warning of their ability to meet the demands of a growing population. Will the Leader of the House make time for debate on how the Government intends to reconcile its housing targets with the region's finite water resources?
Madam Deputy Speaker, as the Honourable Lady will know, that the Government intends to bring forward a water bill in this session, so she will be able to raise her concerns directly as that legislation is making progress.
Mr. Jan Joseph.
Madam Deputy Speaker, Kent Fire and Rescue Services will shortly launch a consultation on the modernisation of its service as a result of a shortfall in funding. As a former public sector worker, I recognise the importance of reforming our emergency services to ensure they remain both effective and efficient. It is equally vital that these services respond to the evolving risks faced by local communities, particularly in rural areas. Could the Leader of the House find time for a debate on the importance of fire and rescue services, their funding, and the steps needed to protect provision in rural communities?
Madam Deputy Speaker, my honourable friend raises a very important matter, and I want to take this opportunity to place on record our thanks to firefighters and fire service staff for all the work that they do. He will know that the Government is committed to working with the fire sector to make sure that the funding system remains fair and responsive, but I'll make sure that the relevant Minister hears his concerns.
Will Forster.
Madam Deputy Speaker, Woking's only brewery, Thurston's, is sadly closing down. The owner, John Mintram, said it's all getting too expensive, people are feeling the squeeze, and you can't sell £8 or £9 pints. Please will the Government apologise to the owners and customers of Thurston's of what they've done to the hospitality sector and agree to hold a debate to ensure that they can properly support the brewing and pub sector in the future.
Very much indeed, Madam Deputy Speaker. I don't accept the premise of the honourable gentleman's question, because this Government has done a great deal to support the sector and continues to do so. But the hospitality sector knows, and he will know, that the best way in order to help the hospitality sector is to get the economy growing, to make sure that they've got money, people have got money in their pockets in order to go out and spend it in the hospitality sector. And that is the first priority of this Government, to make sure that we tackle the cost of living crisis and that we get the economy growing.
Thank you,
Madam Deputy Speaker. Hoarding disorder is a distinct mental health condition, although often confused with OCD. It causes individuals to fill their homes with items they feel unable to discard, even when it causes danger and risks physical injury. In the UK, it is believed that up to 3 million adults suffer from this chronic and progressive condition. So does the Leader of the House agree with me that it is now time to have a national hoarding strategy offering a consistent, comprehensive approach to care, prioritising early intervention and clear pathways for specialist mental health support?
Madam Deputy Speaker, my honourable friend is absolutely right to raise this matter. The impact of hoarding can be severe. There are no plans for a specific hoarding strategy, but the Government has announced plans for a new mental health strategy, which will seek to provide the right support to people with a mental health condition. The call of evidence, Madam Deputy Speaker, is live now, and I'd encourage my honourable friend and others across the House to contribute.
Testimonies.
Deputy Speaker, my young constituent Alex is paralysed after a dreadful road accident a couple of months ago. He wants to return to Loughborough University for his third-year studies as soon as possible. He's been told by the wheelchair services team that he has to have a 27-kilogram wheelchair to start with, then have a different one, and that's what everyone gets, even though he'll never have the strength to operate it himself as it's too heavy. The staff know this, Alex knows this, his parents know it, but there seems to be no way to stop the madness and waste to get him a wheelchair that meets his needs. So can I ask the Leader of the House, please, to speak to the Secretary of State for Health and Social Care to review the NHS wheelchair policy so patients have appropriate equipment from the outset, rather than wasting money and time and causing patients and their families such unnecessary distress?
Madam Deputy Speaker, I'm sorry to hear of the experiences of Alex, because the Government wants to see a situation where individuals get the support that they need, not just generalised support. So I hope that the people that make these decisions are listening to what the Honourable Lady has said, but also I will draw it to the attention of the Minister to get an update on what the Government is prepared to do on this.
David Williams.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. Recently, I attended an incredibly informative SEND roundtable organised by PEGIS, that is the Parent Engagement Group in Stoke-on-Trent. As we know, In this place, we make our best policy when we listen to people who have real lived experience. Therefore, would the Leader of the House please join me in recognising the incredible work of Michelle and the Pegasus team, who have worked tirelessly for many, many years to ensure the voices of families are heard.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. And I certainly join my honourable friend in recognising the incredible work of Michelle and the Parent Engagement Group in Stoke for their work making sure that the voices of families are heard. This government is absolutely committed to making sure the SEND system works for every child, and our Education for All bill announced in the King's Speech will make sure that every child is able to thrive.
Thank
you, Madam Deputy Speaker. Honourable members will remember the harrowing images of 3-year-old Aylan Kurdi, who was found lying dead on a beach in Turkey after drowning when the boat that he and his family were on sunk. A Reform candidate at the 7th of May elections described that situation as blaming it on his parents' greed. He was very close to winning, but today East Sussex Conservatives have done a deal that have allowed Reform to take control of East Sussex County Council, despite Eastbourne voting against that. Will the Leader grant an urgent debate on how towns like Eastbourne can be governed by those that it actually votes for?
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker, and I'm appalled to hear of the comments of the Reform candidate. And as for the coming together with the local Conservative group in order to run the council, I just advise both of them, be careful who you get into bed with.
Melanie Ward.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. And there's been some talk about football, but what I think we should actually all be celebrating is the glorious victory of Wraith Rovers in the Challenge Cup. Madam Deputy Speaker, results from a survey of Burnt Island residents that I've conducted suggest that 87% of people experience difficulties using Burnt Island Station due to the lack of step-free access. For railway users across my constituency, including in Cowdenbeath and Kinghorn, who face similar barriers, this is unacceptable and makes life harder for those with mobility issues, luggage, buggies and bikes. Does the Leader of the House agree with me that Network Rail should prioritise accessibility upgrades at these stations, and will he make time for a debate on railway accessibility?
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. The Government is absolutely committed to improving the accessibility of the railway, including through the Access for All programme. And I'm sure Network Rail will have heard my honourable friend's comments. The Railways Bill also includes legal requirements to ensure that the interests of passengers, including those with accessibility needs, will be at the heart of decision-making on the railways. And I'm sure my honourable friend will want to make her voice heard during the passage of that bill.
Madam Deputy Speaker, during a recent visit to DHL in my constituency of Runcorn and Helsby, I heard yet again about the growing financial burden of the Merseyflow bridge tolls on those travelling to work. DHL wants to expand its operation in Runcorn and double its workforce, but is struggling to attract people because the bridge tolls have become a costly barrier to employment and economic growth. Will the Leader of the House agree to a debate on the economic impact of the bridge tolls in communities like Runcorn and Helsby?
Deputy Speaker, the Government is absolutely clear that we want to see the economy grow and companies grow, and nothing should get in the way of that. But I will draw her remarks to the attention of the Transport Minister. But she might also want to seek an adjournment debate where she can hear directly from the Minister.
And with the final question, Lawrence Turner.
Madam Deputy Speaker. In Birmingham Northfields and across the country, many reports of inappropriate HMOs prove to actually be poor quality supported exempt accommodation. At their best, SEAs can provide a valuable service, but at their worst, they can be a byword for neglect, antisocial behaviour, exploitation and serious organised crime. So please, can parliamentary time be found so that we can discuss the need to bring forward that proper regulation and end the unacceptable blight on many of our constituents' lives?
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. And I thank my honourable friend for raising the issue of HMOs, matter which has been raised with me on a number of occasions. Local authorities do have the planning powers to limit the proliferation of HMOs, but we do keep regulations under review. I'll give consideration to his request for time for a debate, but I'll also make sure that the relevant minister hears his comments today and gives him an update urgently.
And that concludes business questions. I have got a list of members who were unsuccessful in catching my eye today. But can I just ask members to reflect on the length of the questions that they're asking? It's really difficult to get everybody in with such long questions. We now move on to the statement. And before we come to the statement, I'll just let the Chancellor get in her place. And before we come to the statement, I have to say to the Chancellor that Mr Speaker has checked the ministerial code and it makes clear that important policy announcements should be made in the first instance in this House when it is sitting. This House and its members should be the first to know what the government is doing, not TikTok. Posting videos on social media announcing new policies before informing this House is not in line with the government's own rules. This is a new parliamentary session and ministers must do better. I now call on the Chancellor. Chancellor.
Thank you very much, Madam Deputy Speaker. And with permission, I will make a statement on the government's economic response to the war in Iran and the action that we are taking to support families and businesses with rising costs. Madam Deputy Speaker, the government has the right economic plan. I said I would grow the economy, and last week the Office for National Statistics confirmed that Britain's economy was the fastest growing in the G7 for the first quarter of this year. We beat the Office for Budget Responsibility's forecast in the spring, with economic growth at 0.6% in the 3 months to March. And because of the resilience of our economy, this week the International Monetary Fund upgraded Britain's forecast for this year. I said I would cut borrowing. Borrowing last year was £20 billion lower than the previous year, and the latest forecasts show it falling in every year of this Parliament. The IMF has backed our economic plan, saying that the government's fiscal framework strikes, and I quote, a good balance between deficit reduction and growth-friendly spending. I said I would cut the cost of living. Since the election, interest rates have been cut 6 times. Real wages have continued to rise in every single month since I became Chancellor. And yesterday, the ONS confirmed that inflation fell in April faster than expected, making the UK the only G7 economy where inflation fell last month. Madam Deputy Speaker, we have the right economic plan, but the conflict in the Middle East poses a significant challenge to the world's economy, including our own. I have not shied away from my criticism of the war. I believe it to have been a mistake. Nor have I ignored the costs that it will bring to bear on the British people. I have been clear-eyed about my duty to do what I can to support families and businesses, to be responsive to a changing world and responsible in the national interest. Next week, Ofgem will confirm the level of the energy price cap that will apply from July. I know that any increase will be felt by families. Because of the decision that I made at the budget last year to cut £150 from energy bills, we have lessened the impact of rising prices, and current external forecasts suggest that the cap from July will be at a similar level to the cap in April last year. We stand ready to act if market conditions worsen significantly later this year, and I have been leading cross-government contingency work on design of potential future targeted and temporary support. For businesses, any support will also need to be carefully targeted at firms most exposed to the crisis. But while many firms have been insulated from recent price rises through fixed-price contracts, there are sectors that face particular structural issues related to energy costs. That is why we have already increased support for our most energy-intensive industries through the British Industry Competitiveness Scheme, and we've brought that forward. And it is why we have also built resilience in our critical infrastructure and industrial strategy sectors, where supply chains are critical for growth and security. Following representations from my right honourable friends, the members for Redcar, Mid Cheshire and Bathgate Linlithgow, and building on the good work of the Minister for Industry, I am today establishing a £350 million critical chemicals resilience fund to support strategically important producers. And having listened to my right honourable honourable friends, including the members for Stoke-on-Trent Central, North and South, and my honourable friend, the member for Amber Valley, and workers represented by the GMB Union, I am today announcing a new £120 million fund to help our historic ceramics sector, helping them to increase efficiency and drive down energy costs, because we will always stand up for British industry and for British jobs. The government has also this week set out additional targeted support for those businesses most exposed to rising fuel costs. For hauliers, the government is granting a 12-month road tax holiday for HGVs, saving the typical heavy lorry up to £912. To support farmers and the rail freight industry, I have decided to cut duty on red diesel by over a third until the end of this year. And having heard from my honourable friend, the member for Oldham West, Chadderton and Royton, and the trade union Unison, I can today announce a 10p per mile increase in tax-free mileage rates, backdated to April 2026, benefiting those who need to drive for work, from care workers to plumbers. Madam Deputy Speaker, when a country faces challenges because of higher oil and gas prices, we must ensure that those who benefit from increased prices and volatility pay their fair share. In my first budget, I extended and increased the Energy Profits Levy. Last year, I announced a new permanent windfall tax regime on oil and gas prices. Last month, I increased the Electricity Generator Levy, alongside further action to weaken the link between high gas prices and electricity prices. Today, I am bringing forward specific changes to the taxation of foreign branch profits, changing how companies are taxed in relation to their overseas activities. Currently, some oil and gas groups that operate overseas through foreign branches have structured their tax affairs in a way which ensures they pay little or no corporation tax on their UK energy trading profits. Today, we are putting an end to that practice. We expect these reforms to raise hundreds of millions of pounds a year and fund the package of measures set out today, with costings certified by the OBR forecast in the usual way. Madam Deputy Speaker, I know the pressure that family finances are under. That is why I have already taken action to provide help. I increased the national living wage and the national minimum wage to their highest rates ever. I have frozen prescription charges for 2 years in a row, and I've frozen rail fares for the first time in 30 years. I've taken £150 off energy bills, which contributed towards the fall in inflation last month. But I want to go further, and today I am taking further action to ease the burden on family finances. First, on fuel duty. I have already extended the 5p cut twice since the election, and I can confirm today that there will be no rise in fuel duty this year, recognising the pressure that the war has put on fuel prices. Second, I know that the cost of the weekly shop is often one of the biggest worries for families. So last month, I met with supermarkets to urge them to do all they can to keep prices low. And today, I am taking action by suspending tariffs on over 100 different foods sold in supermarkets. And I am clear that I expect supermarkets to pass these savings on in full to their customers. And third, I will not tolerate any company exploiting the current situation to make excess profits at consumers' expense. So I am bringing forward tough new powers so that the Competition and Markets Authority and other regulators can take action when firms break the rules. Fourth, for many families, driving is not always an option. Buses are the most popular form of public transport in Britain, with over 4 billion journeys made last year. I have already extended the £3 bus fare cap to March 2027, and today I can confirm that bus travel across England will be free for children aged between 5 and 15 throughout August. Finally, Madam Deputy Speaker, I recognise that what matters for families is not just getting by, but being able to enjoy time together without worrying about the next bill. That is why I am launching the Great British Summer Savings Scheme to help families and support our hospitality sector. So I can today announce a temporary cut in the rate of VAT on summer attractions from 20% to 5% over the summer holidays. This will apply to ticket prices for both adults and children, covering attractions such as fairs, theme parks, zoos and museums. It will include children's tickets for cinemas, concerts, soft play and the theatre. And it will cut the cost of children's meals in restaurants and cafes from 20% VAT to 5% as well. These changes will apply across the UK, from the start of the Scottish school holidays on the 25th of June and run until the end of school holidays in England, Wales and Northern Ireland on the 1st of September. Madam Deputy Speaker, this government has the right economic plan. We promised to grow the economy, and we have. We promised to cut inflation, and we have. And we promised to cut the cost of living, and we are. Promises made by a Labour government, promises delivered by a Labour government, and I commend this statement to the House.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. And could I thank the Chancellor for advance sight of her statement, though, of course, the press got even more advance sight of it. Madam Deputy Speaker, the decision taken to cancel the increase in fuel duty is welcome. It has been a long time coming. The Conservative Party has been campaigning against the fuel duty rise for months, but the Chancellor has defended that policy repeatedly. That left motorists and businesses worried about even higher fuel prices in September. It was always obvious that the fuel duty increase would need to be cancelled, obvious to everyone except the Chancellor. So can I ask, why did the Chancellor fight us on fuel duty for so long? Why has she been so hell-bent on raising fuel duty during an energy crisis? Well, inevitably, Madam Deputy Speaker, the U-turn has finally come. But, Madam Deputy Speaker, it is astonishing to hear the Chancellor claiming that the government can afford to help households because the forecasts have improved. Is the Chancellor seriously suggesting that the economic outlook is now better than at the time of the last fiscal forecasts, when we have had the Iran conflict, to which our economy is highly exposed thanks to this government's ruinous choices? The Chancellor has just pointed to the IMF forecast being upgraded this week. But let's be very clear about what is going on here. The IMF adjusted their growth forecast for this year up slightly to 1%. But until April, they were forecasting 1.3%. So where exactly is the supposed growth dividend? Will she directly address that point? This is exactly the same game that the government played last year when they U-turned on cuts to the winter fuel payment. They claimed then they were U-turning because the economy was improving, when of course it was due to political pressure. Nobody brought it then, and nobody is buying it now. Once again, we have a weak government caving into the inevitable after spending months defending a truly terrible decision. Madam Deputy Speaker, the Chancellor claims the measures announced today will be funded by a number of different tax measures. But most of the measures she mentions are already in place and baked into the OBR's forecasts. So given the Chancellor has not announced any measures to control government spending, can she confirm that, in fact, the measures she is announcing today will be funded at least in part by yet more government borrowing? And can she confirm whether fuel duty rates will still be rising to the same level as previously planned after December, or whether today's announcement will mean a permanent reduction in fuel duty? Madam Deputy Speaker, whilst we on this side of the House welcome some of the measures the Chancellor has taken today, like the increase in mileage allowances, This is all very minor compared to the inflation this government have fuelled since coming into office, and the tax rises that the Chancellor has imposed. Today's announcements will bring little comfort to the hundreds of thousands of people who have lost their jobs, to the countless businesses that have folded, and to those high streets which are now hollowed out. The reality is that we are in a terrible position to deal with the consequences of this latest energy crisis, thanks to the actions that this government has taken. The Chancellor claimed growth is up. It is actually down. She claimed borrowing is down. It's 75% up compared to the plans that she inherited. She claimed she's fighting inflation. We have the highest inflation in the G7. She claimed she's cutting energy bills. Energy bills have gone up under this Labour government. And of course, she didn't mention unemployment. On the energy, Madam Deputy Speaker, on energy, this government have made a conscious decision not to exploit our own natural resources in the North Sea, weakening our economy and our energy security, whilst importing oil from Putin's Russia at the cost of Ukrainian lives. Families and businesses are facing rising costs and rising taxes. People are losing their jobs. The country is hurting. If the Chancellor was serious about the challenges we face, she would commit to getting spending down, tackling the benefits bill, getting taxes down to strengthen our economy. But thanks to the Chancellor's mistakes and the weakness of this dying government, this statement today is all we get. Does the Chancellor really think this is enough?
Thank you very much, Madam Deputy Speaker. Let me take the issues that the Shadow Chancellor has raised. First of all, on fuel duty. When I became Chancellor of the Exchequer, the freeze in fuel duty was due to expire under the plan set out in the final budget of the Conservatives within a matter of months. I've frozen fuel duty twice already, and I've frozen it again today. And indeed, I've frozen it with more than 3 months to go before the increase was due to happen, giving people plenty of time. I have always said, since the Middle East conflict began, that I would keep an eye on what was happening to oil and gas prices and set out plans ahead of the change due to come to effect in September, and that is exactly what I've done. But I've also gone further in 3 specific areas, with additional support for hauliers, additional support for red diesel, particularly helping the rail, freight industry and farmers, and also the higher mileage rates. And the Shadow Chancellor says he welcomes the changes on mileage rates. Well, it's the first time they've been increased since 2011. So if he welcomes them so much, why didn't they increase them when they had 14 years in government? On the Iran conflict, well, let's remember that this is a war that the UK did not start, that this government chose not to join, whereas the Conservatives and Reform were cheering on that conflict every step of the way. And the impacts on the UK economy and the global economy would be much more severe if we'd have heeded the warnings of heeded the pleas of Reform and Conservatives to join that conflict. The Shadow Chancellor talks about inflation and growth. Well, inflation yesterday, the numbers showed that inflation had fallen. We're the only country in the G7 where inflation fell last month. The IMF have revised up our growth forecast, and we had the fastest growth of the G7 in the first quarter of this year. And the Shadow Chancellor says, is this going to be paid for with new borrowing? No, it's not. If the Shadow Chancellor had been listening, he would have heard the changes we're making around the foreign branch exemption. That will raise hundreds of millions of pounds a year, which is why we're able to afford the package that we have announced today. The Shadow Chancellor mentions high streets. Well, because of the Pride in Place money that I announced at the budget, because of the banking hubs, and indeed because of the changes we made to business rates, which have actually seen business rates for retail and hospitality come down, and come down significantly compared to the plans we inherited from the the Conservative government, we can reinvigorate our high streets. The Shadow Chancellor mentions borrowing. Well, borrowing has fallen below 5% for the first time since 2019 because of the actions that I have taken as Chancellor, and borrowing is expected to fall in every year of this Parliament. Very different from what happened under the Conservatives. Employment and activity remain in the top half of the OECD and of the G7. And the biggest benefits boom came under the last Conservative government when the Shadow Chancellor was the Work and Pensions Secretary. And on oil and gas will play an important role in our economy for many years to come. But we also need to invest in renewable energy, which is why we announced yesterday restrictions in the number of judicial reviews that are holding up investment in clean energy. It is a shame that the Conservatives voted against our Planning and Infrastructure Act. It's a shame that the Liberal Democrats abstained on it, but we are determined to get Britain building, including the energy infrastructure we need to get bills down. And just a couple of weeks ago, I announced changes around tiebacks to make it easier for oil and gas companies to exploit their reserves of oil and gas in the North Sea. And Jackdaw and Rosebank would have gone ahead if it hadn't been for the last government messing up the way it legislated. And we are going to be announcing shortly the decisions. The Secretary of State for Energy and Net Zero will make those decisions. But I am very clear. Oil and gas will play an important role in the UK for many years to come, adding to our energy security alongside investment in nuclear, in small modular reactors, in floating offshore wind, in onshore wind and solar, opposed by the party opposite.
Chair of the Select Committee, Dame Meg Hillier.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. Madam Deputy Speaker, it never fails to amaze me that the Shadow Chancellor tries to lecture this government on inflation when many of us were here in September 22 when his party crashed the economy. I welcome my right honourable friend's interventions, and I'm particularly interested in the cut in VAT in the leisure sector. And I hope that she will be commissioning a full study from the Exchequer Secretary about the impact on this, because it could be a great way to fuel and promote and keep going our stretched leisure and hospitality sector. So will she commit to that?
I absolutely agree with my right honourable friend that we'll take no lessons from the party opposite on inflation when it reached more than 11% when they were last in office. In terms of VAT on the leisure sector, we are making these changes from the 25th of June right until the 1st of September to help boost the hospitality sector, but also to help families, crucially to help families during the summer. Our expectation is that this will cost taxpayers money, but it is funded through the changes we're making around the foreign branch exemption so that companies can't book losses overseas to avoid paying their fair share of corporation tax here in Britain.
Liberal Democrat spokesperson Daisy Cooper.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. I do feel as though we're slightly through the looking glass. For 6 months, we Liberal Democrats have been calling for an emergency temporary VAT cut for hospitality, leisure and attractions, and our pledge was fully funded. For weeks, we have been calling for an emergency transport package fully funded using the additional revenue from higher VAT rates and the EPL levy as well. But for all this time, Madam Deputy Speaker, we have been told repeatedly that it was impossible to do these things, that there was no additional money. And somehow the prospect of a by-election in Makerfield and the Prime Minister's political life on the line means that the money has now been found. But let me ask the Chancellor 2 questions. First of all, on food. I genuinely welcome the government's focus on the cost of food, because this is an issue of huge concern to many of our constituents in all political parties here. But can I please ask the Chancellor whether there is any risk at all that short-term gain may result in any long-term pain? By looking at these tariffs, has the Chancellor had any conversations with the food manufacturing industry about whether they can remain competitive, whether there's any risk that removing these tariffs might inadvertently undermine our food manufacturing sector, and if there is any risk, whether she would look at our plans for a good food bill and promoting nature-friendly farming? And I ask that question in the spirit of constructive opposition. And secondly, Madam Deputy Speaker, the Chancellor and her ministers will know that we are due to have a very hot summer. And that means that outdoor attractions will have huge demand because children will want to be outside in this hot weather. Indoor attractions, such as soft play centres, will not benefit so much because there won't be much demand in the summer months, but there will be demand in the winter months. And so could I ask the Chancellor to look very carefully at the differences within the attraction sector, because children are priced out of play when they need to go indoors in the winter months, not so much in the summer months. Thank you.
I thank the Honourable Lady for those questions. I'm not sure whether she welcomes the changes around the foreign branch exemption or not, which is what is going to pay for these policies today, ensuring that companies pay their fair share of tax here in the UK. But it is important that we always say where the money is going to come from, because unless you can do that, all it results in is higher inflation and interest rates in the future. And that's why I've always been clear that everything I will announce is always going to be fully costed and fully funded. On food, you can't say you both welcome and think that we need to help with the cost of living, but then you're a bit uncertain about tariff reductions. But we have focused these tariff reductions on food products, agri-foods, that we don't produce in significant quantities in the UK, and we've worked very closely with the Department for Business and Trade in identifying those sectors. On the issue of summer activities, indoor and outdoor, well, I've had enough family holidays in the UK to know that there are plenty of days when it's raining, and I'm sure that the leader of the Liberal Democrats will be visiting a soft play centre soon.
Gareth Snell.
Thank you very much, Madam Deputy Speaker. And can I declare my chairmanship of the APPG for ceramics? Can I thank the Chancellor for today's announcement, and can I also thank the work done by the Right Honourable Member for Hove and Portslade and the Minister from Stockton North for their support. This is a really big step towards support for a sector that offers so much to this country. And can I thank Sharon Yates and Finbar Barry from the GMB, as well as Rob Frello and Hannah Roll from Ceramics UK for their leadership in this. But could I extract from the Chancellor a commitment that this is the next stage of a new partnership between the UK Government and UK Ceramics, because today's announcement will absolutely help us survive. But with more working together, we can thrive as a sector and do our bit to boost exports, boost growth, and create well-paid unionised jobs in this country.
I genuinely want to pay tribute to my honourable friend for the work that he's done on behalf of businesses and working people in his own constituency. And along with the other Stoke MPs, the MP for Newcastle-under-Lyme and the MP for Amber Valley, you've made the case powerfully and convincingly. And I can absolutely commit today to work with Ceramics UK, the GMB and the MPs and the wider sector to make sure that the ceramics industry does indeed thrive in the UK.
Stuart Anderson.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. On the tariffs, I want to explore what the Chancellor said on significant quantities, because what is a significant quantity for a supermarket can be a completely different scale for a small South Shropshire farmer. Can the Chancellor guarantee that no South Shropshire farmers are going to be undercut by these tariffs and none of the supermarkets will pass on these cost cuts to British farmers?
It is really important that we help our constituents with the cost of living, and the tariff reductions that I've announced today will save the British shopper £700 million. That is a significant reduction in the cost of the weekly shop for families across our country. But we've carefully chosen these tariff lines, and the full details will be published. We'll be consulting over the next week or two to make sure that we get these exactly right, but we've worked hard to make sure that this does not affect British farmers, and it's also indeed why we're helping British farmers with the changes we've made around red diesel today.
John Grady.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker, and I welcome my right honourable friend's statement. It's great news for the cafes and restaurants in my constituents, of which there are many, and to the showmen. There are very many showmen and women who run Scotland's and Britain's great fairs as well. I know the party opposite object to all of this. It is the party opposite that left us with debt to GDP of almost 100%. And there's nothing progressive in running debt levels like that, and the Chancellor is right to focus on paying that debt off. Many of my constituents in Glasgow East rely on cars and vans to get to work and do their work. They face extortionate charging for parking in town with the SNP Council, which is utterly anti-car, and regular bills for repairing their cars and vans from all the potholes. Would my right honourable friend set out how she is helping hard-pressed car and van drivers in Glasgow?
I thank my honourable friend for that question, and he's absolutely right. There is nothing progressive about piling up the debt that future generations will have to pay, and that is why our fiscal rules are getting the debt and the deficit down, whilst also enabling us to invest in our country's infrastructure and public services. In terms of helping people with the cost of driving, we have frozen fuel duty until the end of this year, but recognising that some people rely on their cars and their vans more than others, we have also taken off the HGV tax for this year, saving HGV drivers up to just over £900 a year. We have cut the duty on red diesel by more than a third, and for those people employed and self-employed, we've increased the tax-free mileage rates to help them with the cost of fuel too.
Dr Andrew Mirison.
Madam Deputy Speaker, the announcement on red diesel will be welcomed by my farming constituents, and they will await details on the tariffs that she has cited with a great deal of interest and with a certain amount of trepidation. But will she acknowledge that a third of the world's fertilisers pass through the Strait of Hormuz, and the increase in the price of that fertiliser is bound to have an impact on British agriculture and therefore on prices in the shops? So what will she do to relieve some of that, in some cases existential pressure on farms in the United Kingdom?
I thank the honourable gentleman for that question, and I would urge him and also businesses, farmers in his constituency to look at the list of products and make sure that feed into the consultation over the next week or so. We are obviously keen to bring these tariff reductions into effect to reduce the prices in the shops for all of our constituents, but we want to do it in a way that is respectful of British farming, which is why we've chosen the tariff lines that we have. And we are, as the honourable gentleman recognises, doing more to support farmers with the reduction in red diesel. The best way, though, that we can help all of our constituents and the farming sector and others is to bring this conflict to an end and reopen the Strait of Hormuz, which is why the Prime Minister and the Foreign Secretary are working intensively with international partners to do just that, and at the same time working to diversify our supply of oil and gas so that that fertiliser that the honourable gentleman rightly refers to is still available for our farmers.
Mr Farnsworth.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker, and I thank the Chancellor honestly for her statement. As she has mentioned, and many members of this House will be aware, I've been campaigning hard for the ceramics sector with a view to saving Denby pottery. And I want to thank the Ministers in the Treasury and Department for Business and Trade for their ongoing engagement through the many meetings that we've had on this point. So I'm delighted to hear about the £120 million support package today. This is a clear indication that the government is supporting and backing UK ceramics, and it will make Denby pottery a more attractive prospect for any potential investors. But with this in mind, the current circumstances that Denby pottery faces, can the Chancellor please commit to ensuring that the funding is available as soon as possible in the hope that Denby can be saved?
I thank my honourable friend for that question, but most of all for all the work that she does on behalf of all of her constituents, but particularly those at the moment impacted by what is happening at Denby. It was my privilege to come to Amber Valley with my honourable friend just last year to meet businesses from across her constituency. We are backing UK ceramics. We want to find a future for Denby, and we will continue to work with my honourable friend to achieve just that.
Alistair Carmichael.
Madam Deputy Speaker, I remind the House of my entry in the Register of Members' Interests. Last year, Madam Deputy Speaker, suckler beef farmers in my constituency were getting paid £7.30 per kilo for their finished product on the hook. Yesterday that was down to £5.75 and it is still falling. The price paid to dairy farmers for their milk is through the floor. Arable farmers are struggling after 2 catastrophically bad harvests. The red diesel cut is welcome, but that will not help farmers who are struggling with rocketing prices for fertiliser, or indeed those who are requiring to heat glass houses. Opening the door ever wider to food imports risks undermining domestic food production. So if food security genuinely is national security, surely our food producers and manufacturers should have access to the same support as other critical sectors. So will the Chancellor look again now at adding food and drink to the government's industrial strategy so that they can have access to the same support as other sectors?
I thank the honourable gentleman for that question, and I know as chair of the Select Committee he'll play a key role in scrutinising what the government are doing. Red diesel will have an immediate and important impact on the costs for farmers, with a reduction of more than a third in the rate of duty. I also appreciate the fact that his party, like the government, did not support the conflict in the Middle East and recognised that it was a mistake that would have an impact on businesses here at home. And that's why we are doing everything within our power, both to reopen the Strait of Hormuz to ease these pressures on consumers and businesses, including farmers, but also in the meantime to diversify supply and opening up new refining facilities in the UK to help businesses, including farmers, during these challenging times.
Dr Alison Gardner.
Madam Deputy Speaker, and the Potteries welcome this statement today. Madam Deputy Speaker, I have been working with local companies, with the TUC, GMB and research organisations to develop proposals to support the ceramics industry to innovate, improve energy efficiency and decarbonise. And I have previously called on the government to release an industrial energy innovation fund for energy-intensive industries, with government grants to explore process efficiency and new technologies, as well as vouchers to access shared pilot facilities. Could the Chancellor therefore clarify that part of the £120 million funding announced today could be used by ceramics companies to access and invest in innovations such as AI-enabled process optimisation and energy technologies to help reduce energy bills?
I thank my honourable friend and all the MPs involved in helping put together this scheme of support for ceramics, and, like my honourable friend, welcome the work of the TUC and GMB in this. Look, innovation and ensuring that the industry is sustainable and competitive for the future is absolutely essential. This isn't just a sticking plaster policy. This is about setting up the industry for the future, including investment in innovation and R&D, and also the diversification of energy supplies.
Kirsty Blackman.
Thank you very much, Madam Deputy Speaker. In oil and gas jobs, the UK is losing 1,000 jobs a month. The Chancellor is aware of this, and we have made it very clear to her that we are keen to move to the OGPM as soon as possible. We would urge her to do that. In the foreign branch profits section of the announcement today, would the Chancellor let us know whether or not they have modelled the job losses that may occur as a result of this change in policy, and if she can tell the House how many job losses she thinks might occur because of this change in the oil and gas taxation regime?
I thank the honourable lady for her question, and like I've said in previous answers, I recognise the role of oil and gas in the UK and its importance to the UK for many years to come, which is why we have changed the rules around tiebacks and why we've put in place a permanent mechanism for taxing windfall profits. But look, the honourable lady has to answer the question, is she in favour, and is her party in favour of the foreign branch profits exemption or not? not, because if she's not, then she can't can't back the support we're giving today to help people with the cost of living and the support that we're giving for ceramics today. But in terms of what this does, it means that we are moving in line to how other countries treat foreign profits. Because at the moment, you've got the absurd situation where losses overseas can mean that businesses avoid paying their fair share of corporation tax in the UK. This moves us in line with what other countries world do. It is closing a tax loophole, and the Honourable Lady and the Conservatives should welcome that.
David Williams.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker, and what a day to be a Stokey. Now, as the Chancellor knows, my mum proudly works in the pot banks of Tunstall and Burslem, and 10 weeks ago I asked the Prime Minister in this place what support the government could offer our ceramic sector. Well, the good news is my mum's watching again right now at home. And she's clearly happy because I've had a free-word text and it says, "Nice one, Duck." So can I ask the Chancellor how we will make sure the £120 million support package benefits ceramics companies of every size, from our Moorcross to our moorlands, from our steelites to our Churchills, so that we protect jobs, skills and the future of our economy?
Well, I thank my honourable friend for that question. And can I say to Mrs Williams and all those who work in the ceramics sector, I'm proud to be the Chancellor that is backing British industry and British jobs.
Exchequer.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Back in March, the Chancellor announced the £50 million Crisis and Resilience Fund to help families out with the price of heating oil, which is a big issue in rural constituencies such as mine in Huntingdon. Does she have any plans to extend that scheme or to repeat that scheme come the autumn, given that we are likely to have a similar crisis with the Strait of Hormuz still being shut? And to what extent does she anticipate that the Russian oil that will come via a third country under Commodity Code 2710 will form part of that fuel mix?
Yesterday, we introduced the toughest set of sanctions that this country has ever had on Russia. But like the previous government, we are phasing those in so it doesn't have a disproportionate impact on industry here in the UK. That is what the previous government did, and that is what we are doing as well. The honourable gentleman mentions heating oil and support for people. We were pleased to be able to introduce that targeted support based particularly in those areas that are particularly dependent on heating oil. We're doing a piece of work at the moment to see how much money has been used by local authorities. I know that some have been more proactive than others in ensuring that local residents get the support they need. Once we've completed that, we will look at whether and what further support is needed.
Adam Jurgen.
Madam Deputy Speaker, I welcome this statement and the action that those of us in ceramic communities have been calling for, and I thank the Chancellor for announcing it. This is a good day for all of us in North Staffordshire, Madam Deputy Speaker. There is a ceramics business, as it happens, from Newcastle. I'm sitting in the gallery watching this statement, so I welcome them, Madam Deputy Speaker, and can I ask the Chancellor to assure us two things. One, that the eligibility for the support in this scheme will be as wide as possible, and that it will be as easy as possible to apply for.
Well, I'm pleased to know that a business from Newcastle under Lyme from the ceramics sector is here today. And I say to them directly, this government has got your back and wants to work with you and the trade unions that represent people in the sector to ensure that the ceramics industry plays an important part in British life, particularly in those pottery communities for many years to come. And of course, we'll be setting out the details of the scheme. But like the MPs for Stoke, Newcastle and also Amber Valley, this government is very keen to crack on with the scheme and make sure that businesses can get the support that they deserve.
David Mundell.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. Could the Chancellor expand on her discussions with the supermarkets and their role in keeping prices down? Because there is always a concern that when the supermarkets make special offers or reduce prices, rather than absorb the cost of doing that themselves, they pass those on directly to farmers and their suppliers, who are not in a position to absorb those costs because of the fixed costs that they are required to make in terms of their production costs.
The honourable gentleman makes a really important point. Today, I've set out a number of measures that will directly help the supermarkets reduce their costs. And it's really important that those cost reductions are passed on directly to consumers. So reducing the cost of running an HGV will have a direct impact on our supermarkets. Reducing tariffs will have a direct impact on the costs of our supermarkets. And also the trade deal that we're looking to do with the EU to reduce the costs of importing food from the EU will have a direct impact on the cost of supermarkets. I say to the supermarkets, those cost reductions must be passed on directly to consumers who are struggling with the cost of living given the conflict in the Middle East.
Adam Thompson. Thank you.
Madam Deputy Speaker, can I thank the Chancellor for her statement and particularly given her VAT cut on theme park tickets, first invite her and all honourable members to join me on my annual trip to Alton Towers this summer. Madam Deputy Speaker, Erewash has many great summer events as well for families to enjoy, like Long Eaton Carnival and the Classic Car Show and the Glow Festival in Ilkeston. But entertaining kids during the summer months can be daunting and expensive for parents. Can the Chancellor elaborate then, please, on how measures she is announcing today will support Erewash families and boost great community events?
My only worry with this package, it will ensure that children badger their parents even more for those days out over the summer, and I slightly worry about what I've unleashed in my own household. But I'm pleased to announce today that trips to Alton Towers and other activities, whether it be soft play, fun fairs, zoos and museums, if many kids want to go to those, not mine probably, sadly, will be cheaper this summer because of the action that this government is taking.
Robert Jenrick.
Deputy Speaker, the Chancellor's approach to the cost of living crisis is to find small ways to subsidise people's costs. Isn't the best solution to build a strong, abundant economy by doing the hard yards of supply-side reforms, where there are better jobs and higher wages, where people are richer and the state has less bearing on their lives? And yet, under the Chancellor, the benefits bill is ballooning, unemployment is rising, particularly amongst the young, and taxes are at their highest ever level. So in the spirit of giving people some relief today, will the Chancellor confirm that, assuming she intends to stay in office for the rest of this Parliament, she won't be increasing taxes on working people at all for the rest of this Parliament?
I will take absolutely no lessons from the man who was part of a party that took our economy to its knees. Inflation at 11%, working people worse off at the end of the last Parliament than they were at the beginning, the worst Parliament ever for living standards, and for a party that has opposed all of the reforms that we have made to make it easier to get things built in Britain, to increase the wages of working people with the national living wage and the national minimum wage, to increase the rights of working people, including statutory sick pay from day one, and ending the abusive zero-hour conflicts. So if we want a lesson on economics, I certainly won't be taking it from the Reform Party.
Josh Newbury.
Speaker, the Chancellor's announcement of a £120 million support package for ceramics will, of course, be welcomed in Stoke-on-Trent, but also in Rugeley, in my constituency, which is home to many workers of the Armitage Shanks factory in the constituency of my honourable friend, the member for Lichfield, who is a staunch advocate for them. Would the Chancellor agree with me that it is only this Labour government that is putting in the investment that firms like Armitage Shanks need? And would she agree with me that iconic British brands like this should play a central role in new homes to boost them even further?
I thank my honourable friend for that question, and I'm pleased that people in Rugeley and people working for Armitage Shanks will also benefit from this investment. £120 million to support our ceramics sector is a clear intention of this government to back British jobs and British industry.
Alfred Brandreth.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. While I welcome some of the measures announced today, the reality is that instability in the Middle East has a direct impact on the UK economy and on the price paid by British households. Can the Chancellor therefore outline what steps her department is taking to work across government to ensure a stable region, including boosting our defence spending, Will she finally commit to 3% spending this Parliament and working collaboratively towards reopening the Strait of Hormuz?
I do think it's a little bit rich for anyone in the party opposite to talk about the instability from the Middle East conflict, a conflict they wanted Britain to join in from day one, a conflict that our Prime Minister made the decision to keep Britain out of because that war was a mistake and it's having an impact on British businesses and British families. I'm proud to be the Chancellor that has overseen the biggest uplift in defence spending since the end of the Cold War. We're spending £270 billion during the course of this Parliament, taking spending to £2.6 billion by April next year. The Conservatives said they'd get to 2.5% by the end of this Parliament. They had no paid-for plans to do so. We are achieving it 3 years early.
Nice shot.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. First of all, can I congratulate the Chancellor on the announcement that she's made? We are very, very welcome. For people in Bradford West, the Great British Summer Saving Schemes, the GBSSS, will go down an absolute treat. Would she agree with me this will always also benefit the hospitality industry, which has been struggling for years in my constituency and across the country?
Well, we all listened to my honourable friend's response to the King's speech last week when we heard about the great restaurants in Bradford. And I'm pleased to say that children's meals in those restaurants will see their VAT fall from 20% to 5%. So all honourable members who are looking forward to a curry in Bradford can enjoy Mumtaz, Agra's and all the other great restaurants in her city.
Excellent. Ellie Chan.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. I'd like to start with the positives. So I know that care workers in my constituency of North Herefordshire will really welcome the increase in mileage rates. And I welcome the measures that the Chancellor has announced, which seem to be starting to tackle profit shifting, which is a key problem in terms of tax avoidance. However, does the Chancellor not recognise that struggling families need help year-round, not just short-term sticking plasters in the summer holidays? The Green Party is calling for free bus travels for everybody under 22 year-round. We're calling for free school meals for all children to help all families year-round. The cost of living crisis requires year-round action. This could be funded easily by taxing wealth fairly. Will she take that year-round bold action to tackle the cost of living crisis properly?
I thank the Honourable Lady for that question and her welcome for the changes around mileage rates and also profit shifting. Obviously not all parties in the House welcome that, and I appreciate the fact that hers does. But we are helping working people. The Renters' Rights Act is the biggest upgrade in rights to renters in a generation. The Employment Rights Act is the biggest upgrade in rights to working people for a generation. We've taken the national living wage, the national minimum wage to their highest ever levels, and for working families, getting rid of the 30 hours childcare, the free breakfast clubs, the extension of free school meals, but also getting rid of the 2-child limit. All of that is putting money in the pockets of working people, and the measures that I've set out today on bus fares, on fuel duties, on VAT and hospitality and more in the statement today will give further help both in Herefordshire and around the country.
Dave Robertson.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. The announcement today of the £120 million fund to support the UK ceramics industry will be so welcome in my part of Staffordshire. Armitage Shanks is often not considered in the same breath as ceramics, partly because of the excellent advocacy of the Stokies, of the members for Newcastle under Lyme and Amber Valley. But actually, ceramics goes much further than flatware, and the sanitary ware that comes out of Armitage Shanks is world class. But it is much, much, much more than that. It is the identity of that village, and it is an iconic British brand. The Chancellor's support for Armitage Shanks and the rest of the ceramics industry will go down so well, not just with those workers and the GMB workers who are part of that factory, but also with my community. So can I thank the Chancellor for her intervention?
Thank my honourable friend for that question, and he's absolutely right that ceramics play a life in so many parts of our economy, not just in great heritage businesses like Denby, who produce plates and other ceramics, but also, as my honourable gentleman has set out, and in sectors like defence and aerospace, where ceramics are absolutely crucial, and that's why I'm pleased to be able to back them further with the £120 million package today.
Joe Robertson.
Thank you, Madam Deputy
Deputy Speaker, the conflict in the Middle East is not the Chancellor's fault, but she has chosen this time to make it more expensive for my constituents to take a car from Fishbourne on the Isle of Wight to Portsmouth. Will she do the right thing and scrap the emissions trading scheme levy that she intends to bring in July of this year? It shouldn't only be Scottish Islands that are exempt.
Well, the measures that I've taken today will help people on the Isle of Wight. We've frozen fuel duty now for the third time, compared to the plans we inherited from the previous government would have seen it go up. We're helping farmers with red diesel, we're helping the rail freight sector, and we are also supporting HGV drivers. And, of course, the Isle of Wight is a place where many people go on their summer holidays and enjoy wonderful days out. And so the costs of that will also be reduced, helping the sector in the Isle of Wight this summer.
Jim McMahon.
I thank the Chancellor for this important statement, not least of all because the previous government failed to act on HMRC mileage rates for the 14 years that they were in power, watching as motoring costs went up year after year and doing absolutely nothing for the self-employed and frontline workers like home care workers. It shows the power of a union like Unison, and that we have a Chancellor who is willing to take the action needed to support working people. Can I ask her, ahead of the fuller review, will the backdating of these measures support both the self-employed and employed workers alike?
I want to pay a tribute to my honourable friend who raised this in Treasury questions just a few weeks ago. I committed then to looking at this ahead of the next budget, but given the ongoing conflict in the Middle East, I thought it was right to bring those changes forward and increase for the first time since 2011 the mileage rate. And I can assure my honourable friend that for home care workers, for plumbers, for all those who use their car for work, we will increase the mileage rate by 10 pence, backdated to April 2026 for employed and self-employed workers alike.
Ms Savile Roberts.
People are very aware that President Trump's war with Iran is worsening the cost of living, but there are measures within the gift of the government, long-term measures which could improve heating costs for households. In North Wales and Merseyside, we pay the equivalent of £255 a year on standing charges. That compares with £160 for London. When will she be addressing this structural inequality in heating costs?
In the budget last year, I reduced energy bills by £150, and just a few weeks ago, I put in additional money to help people with the cost of heating oil. The issue around standing charges and those allocations is one for Desnes, but I will pass on her concerns to the relevant ministers.
Lee Ingham.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. I thank the Chancellor for her statement today. For those of us who are really serious about buying British, building British and backing British, this is a really welcome announcement. And I know the Madam Deputy Speaker will also be interested to find out if the Chancellor could say a little bit more on how she believes this will help the British brickmaking sector.
I thank my honourable friend for that question and for always standing up for the people of Stafford, whether that is bringing a market back to the town or supporting the brickmaking sector. This government are investing £120 billion more in capital spending during the course of this Parliament compared with the plans that I inherited from the previous government. And I'm determined that as that money is spent, whether in defence, in energy, in transport or in building schools and hospitals, that money is spent here in Britain, creating good jobs, paying decent wages, supporting British industry and supporting British workers.
Sarah Bull.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. Food inflation is forecast by the Food and Drink Federation to reach at least 9% by the end of this year. And energy costs are driving up this, along with a lot of the other anti-business policies this government is putting forward, including not incorporating food manufacturing into the industrial strategy. So when will this Chancellor realise that announcing things like capping supermarket prices of food is just like flower arranging whilst the roots of the flower is dying?
The Honourable Lady says that we should extend the industrial strategy. The previous government didn't even have an industrial strategy. And I would say that £700 million of tariff reductions is not exactly fiddling at the margins. Those costs should be passed directly by supermarkets on to consumers to help all of our constituents with the cost of living.
Clive Efford.
Deputy Speaker, can I congratulate my right honourable friend on a summer package of savings for families? It will not only give relief to those families that perhaps have booked domestic holidays, but also give a welcome boost to our domestic leisure and entertainment industry. But can she say a little bit more about how we intend to pass on the savings of her tariffs cuts through supermarkets? Too often we've seen them take a cut and a slice off of the reduced costs to them. How do we ensure that all of those savings get passed on to our constituents?
Well, I remember when I was young, I used to enjoy visits to Chislehurst Caves and Eltham Palace, and I hope that they'll be able to benefit from the changes that I've announced today. But on ensuring that supermarkets pass on these cost reductions to their customers, it is important that they do that, as well as the changes that we're making around HGV duties as well, because that too will reduce costs for supermarkets. And it is important that supermarkets recognise the pressure that their customers are under at the moment. But we have also provided additional powers to the Competition and Markets Authority to ensure that no business, whatever their size, whatever their nature, takes advantage of the conflict in the Middle East to hike prices for their customers.
Jeremy Corbyn.
Madam Deputy Speaker, youth unemployment is now at 5%. And on current form, it will rise to 5.8% by next year, which will mean a very large number of young people without work. What actions can she take to ensure that young people do get access to jobs, do get access to careers, and not the deeply distressing experience of leaving school, college or university and being unemployed? And a disproportionate number of young people rent in the private rented sector. So could she do something about bringing in much-needed rent regulation in the private rented sector also?
We have already increased the number of apprenticeships, and changes to the growth and skills levy means that you don't always have to have a maths A to C and English A to C to get on an apprenticeship programme. We've also introduced shorter apprenticeships to help young people get the skills they need. And on private rents, the honourable gentleman might have seen the changes that we made through the Renters' Rights Act, which gives renters the greatest rights they've had in a generation, including the right to challenge a rent increase and to only have one rent increase a year. And can I tell honourable members on all sides of the House, if you challenge your rent increase and take that to tribunal, you will not have the rent increase during the course of that tribunal, helping limit rent rises for hard-working families.
Florence Esheloni.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. Can I thank the Chancellor for this wonderful set of measures, and I'll go one further than my colleague from Merriwash, who isn't here, and invite her across the bridge to some of the greatest attractions in the UK, ranging from the London Eye, the South Bank Centre, London Aquarium, and even Paddington's Experience, which will all benefit from this wonderful VAT cut, an issue that we've been raising for many months, so it's good to see action on that. I went to visit John Ruskin Primary School in my constituency this morning in Camberwell, and if we think that the impact of what is happening isn't affecting young children, it is. Those children were so articulate in raising questions around oil and gas prices and prices in the supermarket. So can I thank the Chancellor for actually addressing this? And just to follow on from the question, how will the CMA be monitoring the impact in the supermarkets? Will there be regular updates to the Treasury? Obviously, there are non-governmental ministerial department, making sure we are really making sure those prices are being passed on to hard-working families.
I can confirm to the Honourable Lady that the London Eye will be included. Apparently it is called an observation attraction, and we decided that observation attractions should be part of the package of measures. The Exchequer Secretary and I made sure that that was the case. I totally agree with what the Honourable Lady says about young children at primary schools as well, having a deep understanding of the cost of living pressures that their families and carers are facing at the moment. And that's why it's so important that today's measures particularly address the cost of the summer holidays for parents, because whether in Vauxhall or in my own constituency of Leeds West and Pudsey, I know that parents are not always as excited about the summer holidays as perhaps their children are, because they're worried about the costs. And I hope that the measures that I've taken today around the cost of meals, children's meals in restaurants and cafes, and also reducing the costs of those days out will go some way in helping families have a better summer.
Neil Duncan-Jordan.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. I welcome my right honourable friend's announcement today, but I would like to ask her to look further at introducing a package of emergency measures to keep down energy bills through a number of ways: an essential energy guarantee for all households, a nationwide social tariff, and extending the windfall tax on the energy sector's excessive profits.
When I became Chancellor, I extended the energy profits levy to 78% on gas and oil, and as a result of that, we will be able to bring in money because of that. We've also increased the electricity generators levy by 10 percentage points to help decouple gas and electricity prices. And because of the measures that I took in my budget last year, I was able to take £150 off of people's energy bills. I recognise the impact of the cost of living on families and pensioners, and also on businesses, which is why I've introduced a further range of measures today, particularly targeting and helping families, energy-intensive industries, and also those who drive a lot for work.
Marsha de Clover.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. And can I thank the Chancellor for her statement, and also welcome the measures that she is taking that will have a huge impact and support many of my constituents and also businesses in Battersea. And she's also very welcome to come and visit Battersea. We have wonderful hospitality there as well. But as we are living in increasingly unpredictable global landscape, it is vital that we are working with some of our closest allies, and that's why I welcome the European Partnership Bill that was announced in the King's speech last week. But will the Chancellor continue to explore ways to strengthen our economic relationship with the EU as a means of promoting stability, security, particularly in the light of the current financial pressures as a result of the Iran war?
Well, the measures that I've set out in my statement today will absolutely help the hospitality sector and the entertainment sector in Battersea, whether it's zoos, cinemas or restaurants. But my honourable lady is also right to point to the economic benefits, both in terms of reducing inflation and boosting jobs and growth from a closer relationship with our nearest neighbours and trading partners in the EU. And that is why we are currently negotiating an ambitious agreement to reduce the costs of bringing in agricultural, food and farming products from the EU, but also increasing markets for British farmers in the EU, as well as a youth mobility scheme, Erasmus, and the energy trading and electricity trading across the European Union.
Calvin Bailey.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. I welcome the Chancellor's, the measure the Chancellor has set out today, particularly those which will help small businesses like Noted Pie Mash in Leighton, Homies and Donkeys in the Stone, Bear Brew and City Place in Wanstead, and Fresh as a Daisy in South Woodford. And I look forward to seeing their children's menus so that they can benefit from the measures that you've set out today. But what more? Can I ask the Chancellor what more she is doing to support hard-pressed families in Leighton and Wanstead, and in particular those families that also rent in the current cost of living crisis?
I very much hope that families in Leighton and Wanstead, but also businesses in Leighton and Wanstead, can benefit from the changes that I set out today. I know that the cost of renting, especially in London, is very high, and the Renters' Right Act should give greater certainty and stability to renters, but also limit rent increases as well. In addition, families in Leighton and Wanstead will benefit from the 30-hour free childcare offer, the abolition of the 2-child limit in universal credit, as well as free breakfast clubs being rolled out to primary schools. And from September this year, straight after the summer holidays, all children whose parents or carers are on universal credit will benefit from free school meals.
Lillian Jones.
Thank you very much, Madam Deputy Speaker. I'm proud this Government is back in British industry, from today's announcement on ceramics to British steel. But can I ask my right honourable friend if she would look at possible measures to support the UK wood and timber sector, who are facing challenges such as price volatility, rising costs, supply chain pressures and missed productive tree planting targets?
I thank my honourable friend for that question. Today, the measures will help ceramics and they will also help the chemicals sector. But other schemes, whether that is the supercharger, the British Industry Competitiveness Scheme, will benefit other sectors across the economy. And I'm sure that the relevant minister would be happy to meet with my honourable friend to discuss the issues around wood and timber specifically.
Hannah Baxter.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. I declare an interest as someone who worked for Unison immediately coming to this place, and their contribution to my campaign is in my register of interests. I worked as a trade union official for over 20 years representing public sector workers. One issue that came up in pay negotiations year after year was mileage rates, particularly for frontline social care workers, because as the cost of living and fuel prices rose, those frozen mileage rates effectively imposed a stealth cut on workers already delivering vital public services. So on behalf of them and the thousands of frontline workers across Scotland, can I warmly welcome the Chancellor's decision and announcement today? And can the Chancellor confirm that she's spoken with her counterparts in the new Scottish Government to ensure that the levers of power that they have control over are similarly focused on cutting the cost of living for my constituents in Paisley and Renfrewshire South?
Thank my honourable friend for that question. The increase in mileage rates for employed and self-employed workers will have a material effect on those who need to use their car for their work every day. And this is, of course, the first increase since 2011. Alongside the Employment Rights Act, this is giving greater rights, greater certainty and greater incomes to ordinary working people. And I would like to pay tribute to the trade union Unison for their lobbying and their work on this issue over many, many years.
Peter Swallow.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. When I speak to families in Bracknell Forest about the school holidays, they often tell me it can be bittersweet. The opportunity to make treasured memories and spend time with their children, balanced against having to juggle childcare and work, and of course the cost of living pressures that come from keeping their children entertained. So the measures that the Chancellor has announced today on VAT cuts for summer attractions will make a real difference. Can I simply take this opportunity to ask the Chancellor to encourage people across the country to make use of the fantastic leisure facilities in Bracknell Forest, including the Lookout Discovery Centre, South Hill Park and of course Playworld Soft Play, as they make advantage of this new scheme.
I thank my honourable friend for that question, and I hope that families in Bracknell, whether they're enjoying a day out in Bracknell Forest or going on a summer holiday to one of the great seaside towns across our United Kingdom, will benefit from these changes. As well as entertainment, it will also make lunch or dinner out as a family a little bit cheaper as well. And when kids go back to school in September, if their parents or carers are on universal credit, whether they're in nursery, primary, secondary or FE, they will benefit from free school meals for parents that are on universal credit.
Sean Woodcock.
Thank you very much, Madam Deputy Speaker. I thank my right honourable friend for her statement, and especially the measures to support farmers and hauliers. Banbury has a thriving logistics sector with brilliant businesses like TWE Haulage. I visited them last month and I know that they will really welcome the measures that she has announced. I would ask that she and her colleagues, however, continue to keep under review the particular pressures on the logistics sector and be open to any other further measures that may need to be forthcoming.
I thank my honourable friend for that question. And of course, the best way to reduce cost pressures on families and businesses is to get the Strait of Hormuz reopened and those vessels carrying oil and gas flowing again. But of course, in the meantime, I will keep under review the support that is necessary to support businesses and families in Banbury and across the country.
Catherine West.
Madam Deputy Speaker, and could I welcome the tone both of yesterday's announcements at the petrol pump and today in the House, fighting for working people every day. Thank you. Could I also ask whether ice skating is included in the measures, because Alexandra Palace has the most fantastic ice skating rink, and I do hope that they're included in the measures so that children visiting London, as well as London children, can enjoy ice skating slightly cheaper this summer and a lovely meal to boot.
Thank you, my honourable friend, for that question. I will have to check ice skating. I like to pride myself on being on top of my brief, but I do not know whether ice skating is included or not. I did, however, know about the London Eye.
Jonathan Brash.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. Following a successful sale to the LB Group, chemicals firm Tioxide is planning to reopen its Greetham plant in Hartlepool. So the £350 million Critical Chemicals Resilience Fund is a real boost at exactly the right time for this Hartlepool employer. Can the Chancellor say a little bit more about how this fund will work to promote jobs and growth in Hartlepool?
I thank my honourable friend for that question, and businesses in Hartlepool and actually across Teesside will be some of the biggest beneficiaries of these changes around chemicals. And the Minister for Industry is now in his place, and again I'd like to just pay tribute to him for his help in setting out this package of measures today. The Department for Business and Trade will shortly be setting out the details of this scheme, but I can assure my honourable friend that includes help both with capital and day-to-day costs, with the aim of making the sector more sustainable and lower energy intensive in the future to make it increasingly competitive. But we recognise the important role that the chemicals sector has in the UK, and we are determined to ensure a bright future for it.
Andy MacDonald.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker, and I too want to thank the Chancellor for his statement, but particularly the announcement of the £350 million Chemicals Resilience Fund. But as a consequence of the Iran war, energy prices of 16% and food prices of up to 7% are predicted by the Bank of England. So I very much welcome the Chancellor addressing the cost of living crisis, and in particular the steps to help families this summer, including bus fares for children, which will be welcomed in Middlesbrough and Thornaby East. But on that point, no doubt we'll monitor and evaluate the dividends of that travel offer, and therefore will the Chancellor consider whether the long-term free travel initiatives elsewhere in Europe have translated positively in terms of economic engagement and growth and could be replicated here. And opposite the retail sector cries this week, could she advise further on what voluntary pricing arrangement might do for living standards on a core basket of supermarket goods, as was introduced in France in 2023? Thank you.
I thank my honourable friend for that question, and absolutely businesses in the chemical sector in Middlesbrough will benefit from these changes. A lot of the focus in the package today was around food costs and transport costs, whether that is the cost of kids' meals in restaurants and cafes, the reduction in tariffs, and indeed the support for transport, whether you're travelling by car or indeed by bus, recognising that those essential costs are the ones that families fear most when they are increasing. And yes, of course, we will monitor the impact of this. We do, however, expect the range of measures that I've set out today to have a cost to the Exchequer, and that's why I've also set out today the foreign branch exemption changes to ensure that all businesses pay their fair share of tax. Just specifically on the supermarkets that my honourable friend mentioned, the Co-op last November announced on the back of my budget that they were cutting the costs of 1,000 products because of the changes to business rates that beneficially impacted them. And last week, the Co-op froze the price of more than 40 essential products and have committed to work to keep them down. I welcome those measures by the Co-op, and I hope that other supermarkets also heed the calls of their customers to keep prices down and to take advantage of what I've set out today to reduce their costs and pass them directly onto consumers.
I am going to try and get all members in, but please can I encourage members to ask very short questions. There are 2 more statements and the main business to come this afternoon, and we're getting a little tight on time. Alex Baker.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. I welcome this announcement from the Chancellor and the statement today, which will mean that it will be cheaper for families across my community to go to theme parks, farms and soft plays this summer, thanks to this Labour government, and I will see them there because my children have a long list of places they want to visit. On these days out, our families get to choose between eating out or taking a good old picnic. Can the Chancellor bring to life the decision she's made today, how that will ensure that we have families that can have full tummies as well as lots of fun and excitement this summer?
I thank my honourable friend for that question. We are both helping to keep prices down in the supermarket, but also when families have a day out, reduce the costs of lunch at a cafe or restaurant. And having met my honourable friend's kids out on the campaign train in Aldershot, I think that a couple of days out not delivering leaflets would be very much in order.
Phil Brickell.
Deputy Speaker, can I congratulate the Chancellor on what is a really ambitious and comprehensive package of measures to support families across my Bolton West constituency, and as a long-standing proponent of a fairer taxation system, can I thank her for the measures she has put forward in closing the tax loopholes that have been used by oil and gas firms to structure their affairs and avoid paying hundreds of millions of pounds into the Exchequer, which will now finance this package of proposals to support families. She mentioned a little bit about the CMA, the Competition and Markets Authority. Can the Chancellor say a little bit more about what engagement she envisages having over the coming months to make sure that we won't see profiteering going forwards?
Thank my honourable friend for that question. Closing tax loopholes has been a feature of the first 2 budgets I've delivered as Chancellor, whether it is closing the loophole whereby private schools didn't pay VAT or business rates, increasing the energy profits levy, increasing the tax on private jets, and a range of other measures to ensure that those, especially with the broadest shoulders, pay their fair share of tax. In terms of the Competition and Markets Authority, they are already, at my behest, doing a review into heating oil to make sure that customers using heating oil are treated fairly, and we are introducing the Fairer Fuel Finder to ensure that customers can always get the best deal when filling up their car with petrol.
Emma Lewell.
Thank you very much, Madam Deputy Speaker. I thank my right honourable friend for the package of support she has announced today. She knows firsthand that hospitality is what my little town does best. My hospitality industry, fairground and constituents will be very happy today. But could I please ask her to clarify, as I'm not sure, if the 15% VAT cut applies to all restaurants, cafes, pubs, bars and hotels serving children's meals, and could she please keep under review extending this very welcome VAT cut to the hospitality industry as a whole?
I've very happy memories of having fish and chips with my honourable friend in her constituency several years ago, and I can confirm whether it is a pub, a hotel, a restaurant or a cafe, for children's meals, the VAT will be cut from 20% to 5% between the 25th of June and the 1st of September. We will monitor the impact of this, both on tax revenues and on the number of people going out for dinner. We do, however, envisage that this will have a cost to the taxpayer, which is why we are funding it by ending the tax loophole whereby some companies were using losses overseas to offset their corporation tax here in Britain.
Emma Foodie.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. Families across my constituency will be relieved to hear the measures today set out by my right honourable friend. Whether it is the freezing of fuel duty-free bus travel for young people this summer or suspending the tariffs on essential food items, all action that will be greatly welcomed by families who were very worried about the impact the Iran war was going to have on household finances. But can the Chancellor set out how much she envisages these measures combined will save families in the North East, and that she will keep under review these measures, including on energy bills ahead of the winter?
Thank my honourable friend for that question. I know that people in more rural areas, like some of her constituency are, will particularly benefit from things like the reduction in fuel duty and also the freeze in fuel duty and also the free bus fares for kids. We think the changes in fuel duty have already save people around £100 a year and expect the same sort of benefit thereafter. HGV drivers will benefit by up to £912 through those changes. Bus fares, the bus fare changes are unlimited free bus travel for 5 to 15-year-olds, and of course you add in the savings as well for days out and meals out. But most of these things, all of these things are unlimited. You can go on a bus as many times as you like. You can take your kids for a meal and benefit from that reduction in VAT as much as you like. We want people to have an enjoyable summer, worrying less about the costs and more about making happy memories.
Chris Webb.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. The plans outlined today by the Chancellor are going to be a massive boost for families in my constituency, but also the hospitality and tourism sector. I'm sure she'll agree with me that we have some of the best attractions in the world in Blackpool, including the best theme park in the United Kingdom, Blackpool Pleasure Beach, who today are launching their record-breaking 8.7 million new ride, Evictus. Since the Chancellor has made her statement, my phone has not stopped from businesses, theme parks and organisations across the town welcoming this news. So, from behalf of them and myself, can I invite the Chancellor to Blackpool this summer to see the positive difference these policies will be making in our town and see firsthand the potential that we have?
I'm really excited about what is happening in Blackpool, and obviously leading up to the 100th anniversary of the Blackpool illuminations in 3 years' time. I very much look forward to my next trip at Blackpool. I don't say that I only eat fish and chips, but I also remember a very happy meal of fish and chips in his constituency during his by-election campaign.
Serena Breckenridge.
Deputy Speaker, parents, grandparents and carers will know that keeping children busy during the summer can feel like an expensive endurance event. Will the Chancellor assess the economic and social value of the Great British Summer Package of Savings, particularly its impact on opening up access to museums, cinemas, libraries, sports facilities, theatres, theme parks and attractions, building children's cultural capital and life experiences, whilst also supporting local economies in Wolverhampton, Willenhall and across the country?
As I say, it's spoken like a proper former teacher there, expanding the cultural capital of our children. That's what my children want to do every weekend. But whether it is expanding their cultural capital or having fun at a theme park in Blackpool or in Alton Towers, I want children and families to be able to enjoy this summer. And also as a former teacher, my honourable friend will know that the summer holidays, whilst welcome relief for teachers and for children, often for parents, can be a time of worry. And I hope that these changes today will make the summer holidays a bit easier for all families.
Claire Hazelgrove.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. People across the Filton and Bradley Stoke constituency work hard, and being able to enjoy time together as a family this summer is important for everyone. I know the Chancellor's announcement today on summer savings for families, including on popular attractions and free bus travel for children, will be warmly welcomed at home. Could the Chancellor please set out how the decisions she has taken to stabilise the economy have made this possible for the government to fund?
I thank my honourable friend for that question. It is important that all policies that we set out are fully costed and fully funded, which is why we've made the change around the foreign branch exemption to fund today's package of measures, but also because of the reduction in reduction in inflation during to the measures I set out in my budget last year, and because of the strong growth we've seen, the fastest in the G7 in the first quarter of this year, make this package affordable and sustainable, and that's why we're able to set out this support today.
Lola McAvoy.
Thank
Speaker, I wholeheartedly welcome the Chancellor's intervention in this cost of living that is increasingly putting struggles on working families in Darlington. This is a proper Labour intervention from a proper Labour Chancellor, and representation matters in this House. As I look around, I can see Stoke represented through the ceramics industries supported. I can see Redcar, Middlesbrough, Stockton represented and those industries supported. So not only has this Labour Chancellor intervened to make sure that families in my constituency can have a much better summer, but their jobs will be secure for much longer. So thank you.
I thank my honourable friend for that question. And this package was not just designed by me, it was designed by honourable and right honourable members in this House who have made representations to me about the cost of living, but also about the specific business needs and business challenges in their constituencies. So whilst I'm proud to be able to be the Chancellor that's delivered this package today, I also want to pay tribute to all members who have contributed to it.
Jessica Toll.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. I want to congratulate the Chancellor on her skillful management of our economy in what are extremely difficult international circumstances, because despite this, growth is up, inflation is down and borrowing is down. And can I particularly welcome the Great Britain Summer Savings Scheme? This will make a huge difference to families and businesses in my Bournemouth West constituency. But families will continue to worry about their day-to-day bills, so can the Chancellor reassure my local constituents that the fuel duty freeze and the reduction in tariffs on foodstuff will be felt directly in their pockets?
I thank my honourable friend for that question, and absolutely the freeze in fuel duty will continue until the end of this year, and we'll keep it under review depending on what happens in the Middle East. And the tariff reductions it's very important that those, and also the HGV duty changes, that those cost reductions are passed on to customers. I also am slightly worried after the statement that I've unleashed a competition between honourable and right honourable members about whose constituency has the best summer attractions, whether it is soft play, theme parks, zoos, ice skating, or being lobbied by the right honourable member for Redcar about lemon tops in her constituency. I look forward to this continuing ahead of the introduction of these VAT reductions on the 25th of June.
Cat Eccles.
Speaker, can I welcome the announcement from my right honourable friend, in particular the suspension of import tariffs on more than 100 food and drink staples. I know my constituencies across Stourbridge, Brierley Hill and Netherton have been struggling with the cost of a weekly shop. But while we all enjoy a treat, myself included, it was disappointing to see the headlines leading with biscuits and chocolate when there is a public health crisis with obesity and diabetes. So could she assure the House that the government remains committed to the healthy food standard which encourages supermarkets to promote healthy choices? And will the Chancellor work with the Secretary of State for Health to ensure efforts to tackle poor diet and obesity remain a priority alongside the cost of living?
Yeah. There's a whole range of products included in the tariff reductions, including imports of tropical fruits, of bananas, of olive oil and much more. But I expect that honourable and right honourable members would be forgiven for every now and then wanting to have a chocolate biscuit after a day of work in this place.
Tracy Gilbert.
Madam Deputy Speaker, can I welcome the measures that my right honourable friend announced today, which will help ease the cost of living pressures on families in my constituency of Edinburgh North and Leith, and on the very many businesses and attractions that are there, and in time for the Scottish school summer holidays. You're always welcome for fish and chips that are award-winning in my constituency as well. Earlier in this year, the government set out welcome plans to break the link between the wholesale price of gas and electricity. Can my right honourable friend provide an update on these plans and how this will help reduce bills over the long term?
I thank my honourable friend for that question, and I'm sure that her constituents in Edinburgh North and Leith will benefit whether they are enjoying attractions in the Scottish school holidays or indeed whether it is people from the other nations and regions of the UK or indeed from further afield enjoying the attractions of Edinburgh this summer. On the specific issue around delinking between gas and electricity prices. This is both a short-term and a long-term measure, because in the short term we have increased by 10 percentage points the electricity generators levy to bring in more money this year, and then we are renegotiating contracts to move electricity prices onto contracts for difference to have greater certainty around electricity prices, so that the gas price does not set the electricity price so frequently, giving greater stability of energy prices to businesses and families.
Moraz, Madam Deputy Speaker. Inflation down, wages up, interest rates down and growth up. These are the reasons why the Chancellor can make these announcements today. They won't say it on the benches opposite, but I will. Thank you, Chancellor. As she mentioned in her statement, the British Industrial Competitive Scheme is an important support for that economic growth, but at the moment it excludes the vitally important critical minerals sector, which, as she knows, is directly relevant to my Camborne, Redruth and Hale constituency. Would the Chancellor meet with me to discuss energy support measures for the critical minerals sector?
I'm absolutely committed, as my honourable friend knows, to the critical minerals sector. We've already introduced the Kerno Growth Fund for Cornwall, and also have instructed the National Wealth Fund to invest more in critical minerals, including in the huge opportunities there are in tin and lithium in Cornwall. We need to ensure that we have more diversified supply chains for critical minerals and rare earths, and Cornwall gives us a great opportunity to do exactly that, and I look forward to continuing working with my honourable friend and the other MPs in Cornwall to ensure that we can bring good jobs, paying decent wages to the region.
Alison Hume.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. The news that bus travel will be free this summer for children is extremely welcome. Does my right honourable friend agree that this is a golden opportunity for East Yorkshire buses and Transdev to boost summer capacity, ensuring that children from deprived communities in Scarborough are not squeezed off the buses by tourists travelling to the coast for a great British summer?
I thank my honourable friend for that question, and I would absolutely encourage bus companies to use this as an opportunity to increase the services that they are able to offer this summer as they cater for more young people on their buses. And I'm sure that many honourable and right honourable members will have enjoyed days out at the aquarium in Scarborough, and also dinner at the Magpie in Whitby, which they serve very good fish and chips.
Andrew Cooper.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. And of course, you will be aware that the best summer attraction is the Northwich Pina Colada Festival, which is enjoyed by boys and girls of all ages. But nevertheless, I thank the Chancellor for her statement. The relief she's providing to the chemical industry will be welcome to sector businesses in mid-Cheshire, whose expertise and innovation contribute significantly to both local employment and national resilience. I've previously spoken about the rising input costs and regulatory challenges these businesses face, and I look forward to hearing more about how she should consult with the industry on the fund's eligibility. Does she agree with me, though, that the forthcoming summit with the EU presents an opportunity to bear down on regulation further by seeking alignment and mutual recognition on UK and EU reach?
I'm slightly worried that someone's going to do a point of order about what age you're allowed to enjoy the Pina Colada Festival. But yes, we absolutely will be consulting on chemicals and ceramics to make sure that we're giving the right support for businesses. But we don't want a long consultation to get in the way of actually getting the support for businesses. My honourable friend also makes an important point about our trading relationship with our nearest neighbours and trading partners. We're proud to be a government that have done trade deals with the Republic of Korea, with the United States, with India, and yesterday with the Gulf countries. But the biggest prize is a trade deal and improved trade relations with our nearest neighbours and trading partners with the EU. We'll make progress on that, I hope, in the next few months.
Can I thank the Chancellor for her statement this afternoon? I will allow a few moments for the front bench to swap over, during which time I will be obliged to point out that it is in fact Peppa Pig World on the edge of my constituency, which is the finest attraction in the country. Which brings us to a statement on Middle East update. Minister Faulkner.
With permission, Madam Deputy Speaker, I would like to make a statement to update the House on the situation in Iran, the Straits of Hormuz and across the wider Middle East. First of all, Madam Deputy Speaker, I would like to use this opportunity to welcome the conclusion of negotiations on the UK Gulf Cooperation Council Free Trade Agreement yesterday. This is the first trade agreement that the GCC has reached with any G7 country. It is a major milestone for UK partnerships with the 6 countries of the GCC: Bahrain, Kuwait, Oman, Saudi Arabia, Qatar and the United Arab Emirates. As well as the clear economic benefits for all sides, the agreement is also a strong signal of our solidarity with our Gulf partners and our long-term commitment to working together for regional security and prosperity. Beyond the FTA, we are working closely with our Gulf partners, and the Foreign Secretary and I were delighted to welcome foreign ministers from the United Arab Emirates, the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, Egypt and the GCC Secretary-General in recent days to discuss the situation in the region. I would also like to take this opportunity, Madam Deputy Speaker, to address the shocking footage that many members will have seen yesterday of the treatment of those detained from the flotilla by Israeli Minister Mr. Ben-Gvir. As the Foreign Secretary said, we are appalled and have demanded an explanation from the Israeli government. The Israeli charge d'affaires was therefore summoned this morning to the Foreign Office. Our foremost responsibility is the safety and security of British nationals. Our consular staff are in contact with the families who have asked for consular support and with a number of the members of this House. Our staff in the region are now working to help British nationals get home. But let me say this too, Madam Deputy Speaker. While yesterday it was Europeans and others who were subjected to humiliating treatment, which has rightly caused international condemnation, we should be clear that Mr. Ben-Gvir has been behaving outrageously towards Palestinians day in, day out, ever since he became a minister. That is a disgrace, and it was why the UK led an international group of our partners to impose sanctions both on Mr. Ben-Gvir and Mr. Smotrich in their personal capacities, which I announced from this dispatch box late last year. Turning to the situation in Palestine. In Gaza, children are living amid sewage, parasites and disease. The UN has now reported that infestations are now affecting almost 1.5 million people. This suffering is man-made and preventable. As the Foreign Secretary said yesterday, the continued humanitarian restrictions by Israeli authorities are indefensible and they must end. We support the 20-point plan, the hugely welcome release of hostages that it delivered. But the full promise of the 20-point plan has yet to be fully realised. For Gazans, conditions are still dire. The parties must do much more to end the suffering and allow families to rebuild. That also means Hamas must agree to disarm and decommission their weapons, and the IDF must withdraw from Gaza. In Brussels, at the Ad Hoc Liaison Committee ministerial meeting, which was intended to get more aid into Gaza, I spoke with the Palestinian Authority Prime Minister, Mustafa, and Dr. Ali Sheikh, the head of the National Committee for the Administration of Gaza. I was clear on British support for both of them in their urgent work. We continue to work with partners to meet immediate humanitarian needs and advance long-term peace and security for Israelis and Palestinians through a two-state solution. That is why this government took the step that it did to recognise the State of Palestine. But in the West Bank, the House will know that settler violence and settlement expansion continues to drive Palestinians from their homes, including over the recess period. The Netanyahu government is imposing a stranglehold on the Palestinian Authority and the Palestinian economy. Madam Deputy Speaker, yesterday I made a virtual visit to a school in Hebron. My conversations with teachers and pupils there brought into sharp focus the daily challenges facing children, teachers and families across Palestine. Movement restrictions, violence and disruption are barriers to education that no child should have to face. We have introduced sanctions and taken measures in response to the Israeli government's actions. I have been clear that we're prepared to take further action and will not hesitate to do so. Turning to Lebanon, we welcome the cessation of hostilities agreed by the governments of Lebanon and Israel. We call on all parties to comply with it fully. We have a unique opportunity through direct dialogue between Israel and Lebanon to bring lasting peace to both countries, including withdrawal of Israeli forces from southern Lebanon, in line with UN Security Council Resolution 1701. I condemn the strikes by Lebanese Hezbollah on communities in northern Israel, which must stop. I saw myself in Lebanon the impact that UK aid is having to support those displaced and those experiencing the consequences of violence. I made a further announcement of £20.5 million during that visit. That now makes us one of Lebanon's largest humanitarian donors. Our Prime Minister has himself set out to President Aoun of Lebanon our support for his government, and I remain in regular touch with my counterparts. I would like to turn now, Madam Deputy Speaker, to Iran and the Straits of Hormuz. On the 17th of April, the Prime Minister, alongside President Macron, convened 51 countries for an international summit on reopening the Straits. We came together as an international community to support freedom of navigation and to protect global economic stability and energy security. But since then, the Straits have remained closed and Iran has introduced new structures to exert control. That denies vessels the right of transit passage, a breach of international law. The disruption that this has caused to global energy security, supply chains, and economic and financial stability must end. As the Foreign Secretary said this week, we face a global food crisis and we cannot risk tens of millions of people going hungry because Iran has hijacked a vital international shipping lane. It is crucial that international law is respected and that the Strait is reopened, without the imposition of tolls or permissions by Iran, so that transit can return to pre-war levels. To do this, we need a lasting and workable settlement to the conflict. The Foreign Secretary and I, along with the rest of the ministerial team, have been working tirelessly to help this happen. We are in close contact with partners from across the globe to support negotiations, including Gulf partners, key regional players such as Pakistan, Saudi Arabia, Turkey and Egypt, as well as G7 allies. We've been engaging closely with the United States, and President Trump's recent remarks that serious negotiations are taking place are welcome. We share in the President's conviction that Iran must not have a nuclear weapon. We are also engaging closely with Oman, given its long-standing role supporting shipping through the Straits. We're supporting, too, the vital work of the International Maritime Organization and their plan to ensure the safety of seafarers and vessels. We want to see the ceasefire hold, talks continue, and a negotiated solution reached for a durable end to this conflict, one that protects the future of the Strait and the principles of the law of the sea. So we are working urgently, Madam Deputy Speaker, to secure the unconditional, unrestricted and immediate reopening of the Straits of Hormuz. Not a partial reopening, a full reopening without restrictions or tolls. On the military side, the multinational mission announced by the Prime Minister and President Macron is gathering momentum. On the 12th of May, we brought together 38 nations to announce their political support to an independent and strictly defensive mission, and we are now working with military planners from those nations to turn that commitment into reality. In consultation with relevant states and the maritime industry, this mission will support civilian shipping and provide reassurance to commercial shipping operators. We have been clear that operations will only commence in a permissive environment and in full accordance with international law and national constitutions. The UK is leading the way on this mission, and the Defence Secretary has already announced the UK's contribution. Together with our partners, this mission will complement ongoing diplomatic engagement and de-escalation efforts, which remain the priority focus, while demonstrating a tangible commitment to the security of international trade. Madam Deputy Speaker, this government will do all it can to support regional stability in the Middle East and an enduring end to the current crisis, including through further concerted international effort in the coming days and weeks. And I commend the statement to the House.
I call the Shadow Foreign Secretary.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. The conflicts and crises in the Middle East continue to be felt in Britain and overseas, and the government must use all its diplomatic leverage and economic might to pursue a path of peace and stability in the region, which protects the interests of Britain and our allies and our partners. In response to the Minister's remarks about the situation in Israel, we expect full diplomatic and consular access to be made available to British nationals. But the Minister knows that progressing peace, the peace plan in Gaza, requires productive engagement from the British government and not just talk. The government has no role in the Board of Peace, so can I ask the Minister, what is the government doing to bring to the table support for the reconstruction for civilians, the removal of Hamas, the terrorist infrastructure that we know about, and, of course, essentially, the removal of Hamas from power? Can the Minister tell the House when he or the Foreign Secretary last engaged with the leadership team of COGAT and the CMCC on aid entering Gaza for those innocent civilians? Can he confirm to the House the quantum of aid that is going to Gaza through these routes? He himself has said the situation is desperate and we all need to see more aid going through. He must recognise that having a functioning relationship with the government of Israel is key to advancing these important humanitarian and peace priorities. And can he also tell the House what action he is taking to support the disarmament of Hezbollah, the terrorist proxy of the Iranian regime? Now, he's touched on the situation between Israel and Lebanon, and of course that can only be sustained with the right outcomes when the threats posed by Hezbollah are dealt with. So what is his assessment of the situation between Israel and Lebanon? On Iran, we all want the ceasefire to lead to the right outcome when it comes to ending the conflict between Iran and the regional issue that we are all faced with. It is vital that this war ends in such a way that it works for British national interests, but also for Western interests, and for our security allies and our friends in the Middle East who are on the front line day in, day out, including the UAE, which has come under fire again in recent weeks and days. Can the Minister tell the House what involvement the government has had in any discussions and negotiations? Does he agree that the despotic, murderous Iranian regime must de-escalate and act in a constructive way going forward? On these benches, of course, we don't have intelligence on Iran's exact nuclear program, its capabilities, and what it is doing internally in its own country. But clearly, whatever remains of the existing program must be dismantled. The enriched uranium they currently have must be removed, and lessons must be learned from where Iran exploited the 2015 agreement. So can the Minister confirm that that is the position of the government? Clarity from the government on this totemic issue is really important. And what is the government's position on Iran's ballistic and military capability? Madam Deputy Speaker, the government has talked a great deal about its position on the Straits of Hormuz, but yet we've not seen any change in the situation or, to this day, practical measures from the United Kingdom. The Straits of Hormuz cannot be treated as a bargaining tool, and no country or company should be forced to line the coffers of this despicable regime in Tehran. No country should have the power to shut down what is a global artery of international commerce and trade. Is the British government actually putting any pressure at all on Iran to restore freedom of navigation? At the very least, surely there should be new sanctions to tighten the screws on this appalling regime, and a total ban on regime officials who might want to flee to the UK, as well as a concerted effort to go after regime elites who might attempt to park their wealth in London. And we know about their assets, and I've raised these points previously with the Minister. And given a sickening recruitment call from the Iranian embassy in recent weeks, why has the government only summoned the ambassador for a slap on the wrist? Surely the Home Office now must intervene when it comes to the prescription of the IRGC. Finally, on the long overdue UK-GCC FTA, which we welcome, the Minister will know that those negotiations have been underway for many, many years, and it's an important Brexit opportunity. This could be at risk with his ministerial colleagues and leadership candidates now planning to take us back into the EU all over again. Finally, Madam Deputy Speaker, This side of the House stands firmly in support with the British interests across the Middle East, which must be safeguarded, and we must use our important influence in the region to effectively protect Britain, but also our allies, and particularly from those that want to continue to cause harm to the United Kingdom and to our friends and allies in the Middle East.
Minister.
Madam Deputy Speaker, I'm grateful to the Shadow Foreign Secretary for the constructive tones of her question. And let me turn to the important questions of consular access that she raised at the outset. To be clear to the House and to all members, honourable and right honourable, who have constituents involved, we are seeking from the Israeli authorities both consular access to our nationals, as you would expect, and assurances of their good treatment. We understand that British nationals are expected to be deported back to the UK imminently. We are obviously following this up rapidly. If colleagues across the House have concerns, they are very welcome to raise them with me. We are, of course, as I said in the statement, in direct contact with those families who have approached the Foreign Office directly as well. I can also reassure the Shadow Foreign Secretary that we are heavily engaged in the efforts that she describes in relation to Gaza, both in relation to reconstruction, in ensuring that adequate aid gets into Gaza. As I was clear in the statement, the amount of aid getting in remains inadequate. The restrictions remain contrary to the 20-point plan, and we are pushing these points with Israeli authorities, as you would expect, and indeed with all of those with an interest in Gaza. That includes COGAT, CMCC, as she mentioned, but also some of the new institutions formed under the Board of Peace, including High Representative Mladenov, who I saw in Brussels and am in regular contact with. That includes the important discussions about the disarmament of Hamas. Similarly, we remain in regular discussions about the importance of demonstrating real progress in Lebanon on the disarmament of Lebanese Hezbollah, and I was discussing that with the Lebanese Foreign Minister just this week. I'm happy to say a little bit more, Madam Deputy Speaker, about the sanctions that we have put in place already. I came to this House to announce some sanctions in October 2025, which was precisely targeted on senior regime assets in the UK. That has included very significant restrictions on property ownership, which I think she's aware of, up to, I think, a total value of £140 million. And given the serious nature of the topic, I'll resist entering into the discussion and Brexit and whether or not the GCC FTA is long overdue. It was, of course, a negotiation started by the benches opposite. It was a great pleasure to conclude it from these benches.
Chair of the Select Committee, Dame Emily Thornberry.
Thank you very much, Madam Deputy Speaker. I welcome the statement by the Minister. I welcome his reiteration of the Government's commitment to international law, and I welcome his statement that the Government is prepared to take further action and will not hesitate to do so when it comes to Palestine. So it has been almost 2 years since the ICJ issued its advisory opinion on Israel and the occupied territories, and calling on the Government to take action. And since then, settler violence has exploded. And just this week, the UN released a report stating in no uncertain terms that the far-right Israeli government is weaponizing Israeli violence, settler violence, to carry out its stated intention of annexing the West Bank. In February, we were told that the government wanted to respond to the advisory opinion with the seriousness and the rigour it deserves. In March, the Minister again told us that the government would update the House on its reaction to the ICJ's advisory opinion. So my question is, when will we stop hesitating and take action to ensure that international law is respected?
Minister.
I'm grateful to the Chair of the Foreign Affairs Committee for the question, which, as she said, she has put to me before. First off, it is important, Madam Deputy Speaker, to emphasise that we continue to take steps to ensure that international law is adhered to, that those principles underline our response both to events in Israel, Palestine, but also across the wider Middle East. I know the House is impatient for a fuller answer in relation to the advisory opinion, even though most of the substantive elements of policy I think I have addressed from this dispatch box. There is, as I know the Right Honourable Lady is a learned lawyer herself, there are some horizontal implications from the advisory opinion which go beyond simply the context in the Middle East, and that's one of the reasons why we've been taking our time. I will endeavour to return to the House with the speed that she demands, which I understand.
Democrat spokesperson Monica Harding.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker, and to the Minister for advance sight of his statement. I know that many colleagues like me are frustrated by the government's lack of action to secure progress to a two-stage solution. The UK is rightly committed to the disarmament of Hamas and Hezbollah. These terror groups cannot be allowed to continue destabilising the region, but it's not clear that concrete action is being taken to deliver this. So can the Minister tell me how the government is coordinating international efforts to disarm and disband both groups? Our influence over prescribed groups is less than over a state we call an ally. That is why Liberal Democrats have been so critical of the Minister's failure to hold the Israeli Security Cabinet to account for its extremist actions. I was disgusted by the footage of the far-right Minister Ben Gvir degrading detainees from the global Samud flotilla. This after celebrating his birthday with a cake emblazoned with a noose, following the passage of a death penalty law targeting Palestinians. It was right that the FCDO called in the Israeli Chargé d'Affaires to register our condemnation, but it is far from sufficient. In the West Bank, settler violence and expansion accelerates. At the start of June, tenders will be delivered for the construction in the E1 area, a move which could kill the chance of a contiguous Palestinian state. In Gaza, Israeli forces push forward their yellow line inch by inch. Their entry of aid continues to be impeded by restrictive measures, while the humanitarian catastrophe only worsens and journalists are still blocked from entering. In southern Lebanon, the IDF demolishes Lebanese houses, entire villages, an abhorrent and illegal operation. And across these issues, the government's muted response and dysfunction can be summarised in a single example: the decision to cut the FCDO's unit for monitoring of international law breaches across Israel and Palestine. So can the Minister set out what steps the government will take if the E1 project continues? Will the Minister ban all UK trade with illegal settlements, reverse cuts to the FCDO's monitoring unit, and press the Israeli government to allow journalists access to Gaza so they can collect what evidence may remain of war crimes committed there?
Madam Deputy Speaker, I just want to be clear about British leadership on these questions. As I said in the statements, before all of the events that she describes Mr Ben Gvir taking, I had already sanctioned the man from this dispatch box. We have done so in advance of most of our key friends and allies. I saw, as I was walking to the chamber, that some of our European friends are now considering doing what we did in, I think, August of last year. We have taken action both in company and alone, given the significance of the events in the region, and we will continue to do so. I want to turn, though, to the important points that she raised about some of the Foreign Office structures. I am, Madam Deputy Speaker, particularly sensitive to these questions as a proud former member of the diplomatic service myself. It is important to set out that the world is changing very rapidly, and Foreign Office structures need to change too. So in relation, whether it is to some of the reports today about the Iran unit or the reports in recent weeks about the IHL assessment cell, responsibility lies with ministers to ensure that we are properly served both on advice about Iran and advice about international humanitarian law. I still get that advice. It is true that there do need to be some changes in the structure of the Foreign Office. Since I was in the Foreign Office in 2015, the headcount in the UK, this is counting both departments, has increased by 40% over a decade. That seems to me something we need to address. I spent a great deal of my career overseas. That is where I would like to see the majority of the diplomatic service if we possibly can. And so we do need to make changes. But I want to be clear, there is no unit, not the Iran unit and not the IHL cell, which is being targeted. It's my responsibility to ensure I'm properly advised on both of those questions, and I am. The things referred to this morning, Madam Deputy Speaker, refer to an offer to all staff that they can take part in voluntary redundancy if they would like to. It was not, it was not specific to the Iran unit, who do incredibly important work. I was with them this morning, and I'd like to assure the House that I, the Foreign Secretary, and the rest of government continue to be excellently served by the officials of the Foreign Office.
Andy MacDonald.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. This week we've seen 2 Israeli ministers already sanctioned by this government act with impunity. Ben-Gvir assaulting and mocking humanitarian aid activists, and Smotrich saying the Palestinian Authority will get a war, and ordering the ethnic cleansing and apartheid act of the village of Khan al-Amar as part of the illegal development of the E1 corridor, a village visited by myself and many colleagues, including the Right Honourable friends, the members for Doncaster North and Ilford North. So as co-chair of the Britain-Palestine APPG, I asked the Minister, does he agree that our diplomacy and our limited sanctions approach are not working to arrest the ongoing genocide? And will he set out what steps he will take with government colleagues to escalate pressure through resourcing the enforcement of the criminal law, including the application of the Proceeds of Crime Act, through updating the overseas business risk guidance, and through ensuring regulatory bodies are advising their members in relation to the continued illegal trade in settlement goods and services?
I know my honourable friend is deeply committed to these issues. He's raised a number of important points about further steps that the British government might take. I'm not in a position to go beyond what I've said in the statement at the moment, other than to reassure him that particularly in relation both to the village that he mentions, which I know has been visited by a large number of members, not just on our benches, but right across the House, that he is absolutely right to say that further development of the E1 settlement would be a hugely damaging step towards a two-state solution, and we will treat any further moves in that direction with the seriousness that they deserve.
David Mundell.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. And obviously the trade agreement with the GCC is welcome, but why does the Minister think that it's possible to reach a trade agreement with the GCC but not to influence its members to take a more positive role in resolving the issues in Yemen, Sudan and elsewhere? Because they have a key role to play in these disputes, and I know that he takes a very specific issue in Yemen. So what further can he do to make, for example, the United Arab Emirates play a more positive role there and elsewhere?
Minister.
Madam Deputy Speaker, I'm grateful to the honourable gentleman for giving me an opportunity to touch briefly on Yemen. Events there remain dire. We continue to see famine right across the country. The behaviour of the Houthis is not in the interest of the Yemeni people. We, of course, have regular and fruitful discussions with all of our partners in the GCC about Yemen, about Sudan, about a whole range of international crises facing us, and will continue to do so.
Alan Gellan.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. Can I thank the Minister for his statement? I'm proud to be part of a Labour government that took the historic decision to recognise the state of Palestine. But the prospect of a single unified Palestinian state is now under enormous pressure from the expansion of illegal settlements. Does the Minister agree that anyone who wishes to have a just and lasting peace in the Middle East must oppose settlement expansion?
Madam Deputy Speaker, it is a great pleasure to answer a question from my honourable friend, not least given he was himself a distinguished member of the diplomatic service, and he is absolutely right.
Wendy Chamberlain.
Madam Deputy Speaker, my constituent Antonis Varadis is a much valued and loved professor at the University of St Andrews, and he is one of a number of British citizens who have been detained by the Israeli authorities in international waters and taken to Israel for processing. I've been in touch with his family, friends, colleagues and students in recent days, and they are all deeply concerned about how he will be treated and when he will be released. And the video that members have already referred to seems to confirm their worst fears. So although I'm pleased to see reports of the Israeli embassy being summoned to meet the FCDO, and I'm grateful for confirmation from the Minister about the expected processing and release, can I ask, were the actual calls of the Sumud flotilla raised in the meeting with the Israeli chargé d'affaires? We need to see those aid routes reopened, and we need to see aid coming into Gaza under UN oversight.
Minister.
Madam Deputy Speaker, they were, as they have been in every engagement with the Israeli government since the signature of the 20-point plan. It is vital that aid gets in at the scale and in the manner envisaged under the 20-point plan.
Melanie Ward.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. And firstly, let me commend the government's action on Iran. It's doing the right thing where others in this chamber would have led us down a different and dangerous path. Let me say that I agree with the Minister's words on Palestine and Lebanon, but we are long past the point for words being anything like enough. I served in Hebron as a human rights observer 13 years ago, and what the Minister described as happening there today was happening then. Yeah. I too have visited Khan al-Ahmar, which the Israeli government now wishes to wipe off the map. Experts say Israel is committing genocide in Gaza and working to ethnically cleanse the West Bank. They've passed a law to hang Palestinians. Shameful. The Minister is my good and honourable friend, and he says the government is not hesitating to act on this issue, but that is not true. Unfortunately, for far too long, we have had a hesitancy to take further meaningful action. Where are the comprehensive sanctions on the people committing these human rights violations and holding up aid from entering Gaza? Why do we not have a ban on settlement trade yet? And why have we not yet banned British charities who are funnelling money to settlements?
I want to pay tribute to my honourable friend who's long been committed to these issues, both in this House and before, and is, I think, probably the only member of this House who has been to Gaza since the conflict began. We have taken wave after wave of sanctions action, and I want to reassure her that we treat these issues with the seriousness that they deserve, and I'm sure I will be returning to the House in due course to update her on that.
Kit Malthouse.
Well, Madam Deputy Speaker, as I'm sure the Minister is realising, we're all a bit fed up with yet another gaslighting statement on Israel and Palestine. There is no ceasefire in Lebanon. We all see the killings, the double, triple tap killings on a daily basis. As he said himself, the situation in the West Bank is worse than it's ever been, with rampaging gangs kettling Palestinians into the cities, so who knows what will happen to them. And yet we continue to trade with these people and support them. And in Gaza, of course, whether by accident or design, there is no progress whatsoever, and the situation continues to worsen. As the Right Honourable Lady, the Chair of the Select Committee, said, can he not see that when he stands up and says you will not hesitate, we're all thinking that every statement is yet another hesitation in the face of what is an unfolding picture of savagery across the whole region. But I have one specific question for him on the detainees from the flotilla in particular. If that is what Ben Gvir and his henchmen are willing to do to British and European citizens on camera, what does he think they're doing to Palestinians off camera?
Madam Deputy Speaker, I made that very point in my statement. Of course, we can expect that what Mr Ben Gvir does on camera to Europeans and others is just a fraction of what is being done behind closed doors. That was why I made that exact comparison in my statement, and it is why we sanctioned him well before many of our friends and partners have done so.
Catherine West.
Thank you very much, Madam Deputy Speaker. My honourable friend will be aware, because I've written to him, that I have a constituency interest in this urgent statement, and I wanted to ask him, first of all, to welcome what's already been done in bringing the Israelis in this morning to discuss with them the concerns both of the government and of this House. But will he also give me reassurance that every single consular, diplomatic